It's now time for the news. My name is Pakwesi Shandoff. Now to our very first story this morning, the governing New Patriotic Party says that former President John Dramani Mahama's claim that a future NDC government will repeal the e-levy is nothing but a scam. The NPP says Mr. Mahama failed to repeal the talk tax in his tenure despite a similar promise by the NDC prior to the 2008 election. At a news conference on Wednesday, Yao Boabina someone asked Guineans to disregard the promise from former President John Dramani Mahama.
In his 23-page paper, as you are all aware, delivered, the NDC aspirant for flag bearer artfully skips his gargantuan false investment into establishing the interoperability platform. $1.2 billion. $1.2 billion was contracted to install a platform that fell short of allowing bank accounts to speak to Momo wallets for only $4.5 million. And look at the difference. 1.2 billion. 1.2 billion for a substandard application and a higher spec application for only $4.5 million. And that system that was installed has grown revenue from internet businesses, internet usage, internet financial transactions from GHS 78 billion in 2016 to nearly 1 trillion cedis by end 2021. Even so, the John Mahama endorsed company sought damages in court in excess of $400 million for no work done. He doesn't state this in his paper. He only glosses over it and says that they've done a lot of work. His government did a lot of work.
Boabina Samoa also took on claims by John Mahama that the NPP's economic record is the worst in recent times. He maintains the NPP has a far superior economic record compared to that of former President John Dramani Mahama.
Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest gap in John Mahama's approach to your political feelings is his refusal to acknowledge the true impact of COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukraine war on the economy of Ghana. Whilst he opts to believe beyond the shores of Ghana, his hope of election lies in misrepresenting the state of Ghana to the extent that he even ignores the bare truth that the IMF and the World Bank put out at the end of the program he put us into. Yes. If the NDC still accepts IMF and World Bank projections, is the 5.4% projected growth for 2022 still valid? As we speak, even with the major difficulties we have, international multilateral agencies, the IMF and the World Bank in the lead, are saying that Ghana's economy is going to grow by 5.4% this year.
Now, the Supreme Court, in a 7-member panel, has unanimously thrown out the interlocutory injunction on the implementation of the e-levy filed by 3 members of parliament from the minority. It has, however, ordered the Ghana Revenue Authority to keep accurate records of the e-levy transactions. The court cited a possible hardship on the economy if the injunction is granted. Samuel Mbura was there at the court and files this report.
The Supreme Court, in its ruling, raised issues of the nature of the reliefs sought by the applicants, Harun Idrisu and 2 others in the substantive matter, the inconvenience or loss to be suffered, including refunding the numerous tax deductions. The court speaks about the nature of the law under attack, the public interest and welfare of Ghanaians, the legal principle of presumption and regularity as enacted in the evidence decree. The court said the Republic would suffer a great deal if the government is temporarily stopped from deducting the levy from electronic transactions and noted that mechanisms do exist within the current tax regime to refund payees who have either overpaid or wrongfully paid, and that must be taken advantage of. The court said while GRA can do a refund should the substantive case be won, the GRA cannot recover the levy if the substantive case is lost. In our opinion, greater hardship will be on the state and the balance of power tilts in favor of the state. We order the GRA to keep accurate records of the amounts deducted so that at the end of the substantive matter, nobody will be disadvantaged. Addressing the media after the court proceedings, Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu told the media after the court proceedings that they were satisfied with the performance of their lawyers. He indicated that the directive to the GRA to preserve the transaction record was in the right direction.
We remain determined that even on the balance of weighing monetary considerations against the weight of a constitutional breach, the emphasis should be on what harm we are doing to the 1992 Constitution and the three co-equal organs of states. So in the determination of whether some irreparable damage or hardship will be caused, our hardship as we understand it is the disrespect to the Constitution by the action of passage into law of an Act 1075 with numbers below the minimum constitutional threshold of 138 members of parliament. Can you imagine? I heard the Attorney General laboriously arguing that it was a voice vote. So Ebenezer Kum voted with his voice from an ambulance, or he voted with his voice from a clinic to add to the voice vote, and he is insisting that 266 members of parliament participated in the decision and participated in the motion. 266 members of parliament after the minority of 136 walked out. Certainly, these are matters that the Ghanaian public can judge better. But what is refreshing and heartwarming today is the second part of the ruling, which gives directives to the Ghana Revenue Authority to preserve and keep the money. At least some people will not be in a rush to collateralize it until the substantive matter is determined.
But the Attorney General, Godfrey Dami, said the court's decision confirms his argument that the application was factually uncertain.
You saw what happened in court today. It was an embarrassing spectacle. The lawyer clearly was not able to demonstrate any form of irregularity with proceedings in Parliament. The court asked him, so is there any record that indicates that X number of MPs worked out at a certain stage? Is there any record that shows that a head count of all the MPs in Parliament was taken? That was not done. He said, absolutely said no. There was no evidence indicating whether there was a head count of the number of MPs present in Parliament who voted to support the bill. There's also nothing provided by the lawyer that indicated that there was a walkout by X number of people in Parliament. So I think we should ignore all that propaganda.
Head of Settlement Studies at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Professor Divine Ahaji, wants clarity on the selection criteria of Ghana's affordable housing scheme. I beg your pardon. He observes the lack of public awareness on the criteria is a bane to its smooth implementation. According to Professor Ahaji, the houses have the tendency to fall in the wrong hands if these measures are not properly put in place.
Affordable housing. You talk about affordable housing because you are aware that there's the full market price for housing, which most people cannot meet. Okay, so when you say affordable housing, it means that you are putting in a scheme where you are expected to help those relatively lower income or those who need help to be able to access the housing ladder. And that is where it's becoming clear that if you are going to do that, then you must have criteria in place in terms of eligibility criteria and also selection process. And what it means is that, for instance, on the demand side, you're going to put out affordable housing. Let's start in from the supply side, because what will happen is that once government says it's putting in affordable housing, then government might have provided some incentives for the developers, for which recently, even the president is talking about providing incentives for property developers. So the question would be, at what price are the people supposed to deliver the house? Normally the public is not made aware of what is the criteria in terms of delivering the house and the prerequisites in terms of the delivery. That's for the supply side. And then what income group the house is going for. That has to be made clearly at the start of the project. Now let's come to the supply side. Questions of the same thing, which income group? For instance, if you own a house already, can you still access the house? If you have a house in the location where the affordable housing is being built, can you still access the house? Are you a first-time buyer? Or are you somebody who is owning a house for the first time?
This is the first time in my life I am attending a party because I have never had such an opportunity. These were the words of an orphan, Kabiru Rafia, from the R.A. Rahman Foundation when she joined more than 50 orphans at a get-together organized by the Denvela Save Lives World Foundation. The program was to offer the children the opportunity to have a feel of the Eid festivities celebrated around the world.
An act of kindness, most people believe, is a step in attracting blessings from God. But for these orphans who were invited to feast at the Aliu Muhammad Sports Stadium, it was not just a blessing, but a rare opportunity in a lifetime. Kabiru Rafia said she has never had the opportunity to attend a party.
I'm very happy I was coming in this party. I never knew any party. This is the first time that I have been in a party. May God bless them and give us long life. Thank you.
Two of her colleagues were full of praise for the organizers for remembering them on such an occasion when most people have forgotten they exist.
God bless the organizers for the fun they have made us to enjoy. It looks like people had forgotten of us, but he came in. God bless him.
Happy someone remember us. It is my appeal that people who are capable of organizing this should help.
Founder of the Denvela Save Lives World Foundation, Governor Apasinaba Wumbe, said the idea to bring the children together was to make them feel loved.
And I have a foundation that got to do a lot of interventions, social interventions. So, I recollected what the gentleman told me, and then he became an orphan. So I decided to add it to our projects and make orphans to smile. If an orphan smiles, it is God that smiles. Orphan smile, God smiles. But if orphan is not happy, God also not get happy. So I thought it on the other side to say, okay, then let's start this project by making orphans happy. And today is a Salah.
He urged Ghanaians to remember the less privileged in society, especially on festive occasions.
That's why I'm saying so is that, for example, you have money, and your aim is to do, we say you have struggled to get the money, but you need to do something to make someone happy.
The Ghana National Fire Service has appealed for the support of the district and municipal assemblies in the Volta region to enhance firefighting in the region. Volta Regional Fire Service Commander, Assistant Fire Officer 1, Joy Ameibo Ayim, entreated the assemblies to establish bush fire to control the spread of fire in communities in that particular enclave.
In commemoration of this year's International Firefighters Day, some officers stationed in the Volta region converged at the regional command to honor and mourn officers who had fallen in the line of duty to save life and property. The occasion was also used to create awareness of the sacrifices of firefighters and the need to prevent fire outbreaks. The Volta Regional Fire Commander, Assistant Fire Officer 1, Joy Ameibo Ayim, outlined some measures to be undertaken to improve firefighting.
The theme for the celebration is valuing the collective sacrifices of firefighters. The theme brings to mind sacrifices firefighters make in saving lives and property. In the awareness creation, we urge the municipal and district assemblies to establish bushfire control subcommittees in the assemblies in accordance with PNDC Law 229, which is touches on control and prevention of bushfires. The act was promulgated in 1990. We also want the assemblies to support the training of fire volunteers and then fire education programs that are done in their districts so that we can reach the nooks and crannies of this region. We also urge them to try to establish more fire stations and then fire posts. This will enhance the proximity of our services to the community. In conclusion, I want to call upon the public to support the service with logistics such as pickups, motorbikes, bicycles, since government alone cannot do it, so that we can get to every nook and cranny of the region.
The Volta Regional Minister, Dr. Archibald Lecha, who graced the occasion, lauded the commitment of firefighters in the region.
Whatever we do is service to God. So it doesn't really matter about what people say, about the criticism that we receive from people. But let us make sure that we do our work according to our protocols. We will be criticized, but let's accept the criticism in good faith, and let us just always examine ourselves to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Your role even during road traffic accident is something we appreciate. But for your part, many people would have perished on our roads. And together with the Ghana Ambulance Service, we know that you're doing a lot of collaboration and work together.
DO1 Henry Gogovi, who is the most senior officer in the Volta region, was honored for his selfless service to firefighting. Wreaths were laid for officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. Fred Kwame Asari, Joy News. Oh.
Now, in the Bono East region, Regional Minister Kwesi Edujan used the opportunity to laud the firemen for their swift response in saving lives and also cautioned the public to desist from assaulting officers in their line of duty. And Nasabet has more in the following report.
Observed annually across the globe on the 4th of May, the International Firefighters Day is celebrated to create awareness about the significant role of firefighters in ensuring the safety of the people and property, and also to recognize, honor the sacrifices of the firefighters, and also to pay respect to those firemen who lost their lives in line of duty. Here in the Bono East region, the day was marked under the theme, valuing the collective sacrifice of the firefighters. DCFO George Enim Frimpong is the regional fire commander.
This year's theme for the Firefighters Day is valuing the collective sacrifice of the firefighters. The day is to honor the work and sacrifice made by firefighting professionals. It will interest you to know that firefighters are one of the most courageous and fearless people who dedicate themselves for the protection of people and properties. They are tasked with running towards the dangers instead of away from it, just to rescue people from burning buildings and vehicles, as well as fighting fires.
He urged officers of the Ghana National Fire Service to work harder in order to help save lives and properties.
Fellow firefighters, I urge you all to work harder in order to achieve our aim. Ours is to educate. Ours is to save lives and protect properties.
DCFO George Frimpong also used the opportunity to highlight fire cases recorded across the region within the first quarter of the year 2022.
The first quarter of 2022, this year, we have recorded 57 fire-related cases, with domestic fires topping being 37, industrial fires 4, commercial fires 7, institutional fires 5, and vehicular fires 4, which resulted in 2 injuries as a result of fire-related incidents.
On his part, Borno East Regional Minister Kwesi Adujan, who was the special guest at the function, lauded the personnel of the fire service for their swift response in saving lives over the years.
Personnel of Ghana National Fire Service are not only prompt and highly skilled in providing assistance to fire and rescue emergencies, but they also play a leading role in ensuring public safety by educating school children, market women, and other institutions on the way to prevent and ensure that there is safety in the country.
Thanks for your time. My name is Pakwesi Shandov. The show continues with Benjamin and Benes.
Okie doke, thank you for joining us this Thursday morning as we dig into the papers. But even before we're joined by policy analyst with Imani Africa, Selom Brantier, I want to put something to you because it's a question we're posing to you later on the show. It has to do with press freedom. You've seen the latest ranking and what it says about where we find ourselves when it comes to press freedom. I've heard from the boss of the National Media Commission, who puts things in a pretty different light, so to speak. I've heard from the NDC on this. I've heard from the NPP on this. We've heard from Yawabena Samwa. And we also have Kojo Nkrumah, who has put a few things out there as well, the Minister of Information. And he has pointed to a few facts, and I'll be running them by Selom Brantier. But he talks about the legal framework, or basically the reference points for the Reporters Without Borders and why their new methodology and other factors may have impacted this decision. But it's interesting because even when he talks about the scores and rankings and when he talks about the 5 parameters assessed under the new methodology, he says that Ghana scored appreciably high on 4 of them out of the 5. It's only when it comes to the economic situation of media people that we did not score well. That's the figure we got. So he points out that as far as the legal framework is concerned, we scored 81.42% and social-cultural context, 79.64%. Ghana also recorded above average and moderately high scores for political context, 66.61%, and safety of journalists, 62.25%. The safety of journalists bits, yeah, I'm also... But anyway, the only parameter in which Ghana performed below average was economic context, 47.22%. And according to him, this refers to the economic conditions of journalists on one hand and financial stability of media houses. He makes other points in this release, but I have a question for Kojo Nkrumah and for Yawabena Samwa. For us journalists, and Kojo, you have been here before, for us journalists, do we need anybody to tell us when things are going well? Do we? I mean, we are in the soup. We are here. Do we need someone to tell us that, oh, and I say or something of the sort? I'm just saying, I'm just asking an open question. What do you think out there from what you've seen? And others cite happenings like what we saw with Ahmed Hussein Swale. Till today, we don't know what happened to him, who gunned him down, those shots in his chest and his neck, in other parts of his body. We've received promise upon promise, and especially when you consider that a certain member of parliament, I just want to refrain from mentioning his name, went on a platform and said, you know what, find this guy, beat him up, do all kinds of things to him. And today, he rests with the ancestors. It's also interesting when you take the perspectives of other people in the media space. Manasseh Azure Awene, he has a lengthy piece on that. You can check it out on the Fourth Estate. But he tweets a short bit, which I think succinctly reflects what he thinks. He says, I have been doing journalism since Kufuor, and in my view, Akufo-Addo's era, I beg your pardon, is the worst for journalists in Ghana. So at the tail end of the show, we ask you, do you concur, do you agree, or do you not? When Salom joins me, we'll get into some of those matters. But let's dig into the papers now. The Daily Graphic newspaper, salary demands job security. 5 labor unions call for political will. Let's take some details on that story. And 5 labor unions have urged the government to show genuine political will and honesty to initiate measures to address the appalling conditions of service of workers. They also expressed worry about the general low wages and salaries of workers, saying it was only when the government demonstrated true political will to increase workers' salaries by at least 20% and use social dialogue with labor unions that it could engender the trust needed to resolve the frequent labor unrest. In their view, the government as an employer must also show respect to labor unions during negotiations, a cardinal principle in social dialogue. The leaders of the various labor unions said these in interviews with the Daily Graphic during the May Day celebrations at the Black Star Square in Accra last Sunday. So that is a major issue of concern that has come up. And we know these labor issues have been with us for a while now, and we still contemplate them, especially as the TUC, CLOGSAG, and others, well, one party wanting a neutrality allowance and others saying, up the ante, give us COLA, cost of living allowance, of up to 20%, which will be reflective or commensurable with the inflationary rates. Supreme Court throws out injunction on Elevy. I'll get to that story shortly. Memphis honors Ghana at festival. Asantehene given rousing welcome. But let's do the story on page 16 and the one on page 20 before we shove off and get into other stories. So this one says, Supreme Court throws out injunction on Elevy. You may have heard by now, and it has dismissed an interlocutory injunction application by 3 members of parliament, which sought to temporarily put the implementation of the electronic transfer levy on hold. Led by the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, the 3 NDC MPs wanted the court to halt the implementation of the e-levy pending the final determination of their suit challenging the constitutionality of its passage by Parliament. The other MPs are Mahama Yariga, MP for Boku Central, and Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, MP for North Tongue. However, in a unanimous decision yesterday, a 7-member panel of the Apex Court held that putting an injunction on the e-levy would occasion irreparable harm to the state and would not be in the public interest. To quote them, they say, in our opinions, greater hardship will be caused to the state in meeting its developmental obligations to the people, the court held. And so that is the situation, but the substantive case remains in court, and we'll see how that pans out. The 3 NDC MPs argue that there were 136 or a purported 137 MPs present during the passage of the e-levy. How will it pan out? The Apex Court will tell us with time. But as of now, they say it will cause great hardship to the state. I'm sure some may be thinking, how about the great hardship to the citizens? And who makes up the state? Ghana can reverse press index ranking. That's according to President of the GJA, Dr. Afeo Money. He says he knew there were problems, but he did not anticipate the country's huge decline on the World Press Freedom Index, even in a, quote, confluence of anti-media factors. So, again, I reflect, when even the GJA is saying there are anti-media factors, can we just sit aloof and say, no, everything is fine? Okay, so those are the details from there. Let me also turn to page 20 and get the take of Kojo Opon Kroma, my senior brother, and, of course, Minister of Information. Now, the government remains focused on building collaboration among stakeholders to improve Ghana's ranking on the new model World Press Freedom Index. The Minister of Information, Kojo Ponkroma, has stated, which is heartwarming. I respect him for that, because when you fail, you must get up again and do the right thing. Now, in a statement to mark World Press Freedom Day yesterday, which is what I was reading to you earlier, he said although the government had taken note of the caution not to compare 2021 and 2022 World Press Freedom rankings, it acknowledged that a lot more was needed to be done by stakeholders to ace Ghana's ranking on the new model. Now, publishers of the ranking announced that they had employed a new methodology which moved Ghana to 60th in the global ranking for 2022, cautioning against a year-on-year comparison. Now, the new methodology takes into account a quantitative survey of press freedom violations and abuses against journalists and the media, and a qualitative study based on the responses of hundreds of press freedom experts selected by Reporters Without Borders, which includes journalists, mind you, journalists, academics, and human rights defenders. That's where we sit on this. Journalists, academics, human rights defenders are those who, in the end, put this together. So what did they see, and what do we see differently? And that also reminds me of a certain Elizabeth Ohene and what she sent to the BBC in recent times. Manasseh Azuri Awene, expatiates on some of that as well. So it has become a bit murky, hasn't it? That was why I started by asking, who can really tell? Is it the person in the kitchen feeling the heat, or is it the person outside of the kitchen who is saying, you're not really hot? Who feels the heat? Anyway, so Mr. Nkrumah stressed the importance to step up the country's response by educating state agencies and the public to relate better with journalists, even when they disagreed with their work. Already, he said the government had supported the National Media Commission to establish an office for the coordinated mechanism on the safety of journalists. And even as I say this as well, I want to speak about the Ghana Police Service and the other, those others in our security framework, apparatus. Sometimes the way they treat people, until maybe they find out you're a journalist, then they start, hey, Papa Joy, do you need to know whether or not I am a journalist before you do the right thing? And there was an issue I reported to the Police Professional Standards Bureau. Greetings to the head. Till today, that matter, CCTV things. I'll follow up on the story, because anytime I check, but sometimes police and the way you relate to people, all of that is in there. And sometimes you see supposed national security operatives storming radio or TV stations and all of that. How did we even get here? Anyway, so that is that for the Daily Graphic. Just to wrap with this business story, over $300 million worth of gas flared in 2 years. Let's say goodbye to the Daily Graphic and get ready for the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Pardon me, my voice this morning. The Ghanaian Times, at World Press Freedom Day celebrations, anti-media factors caused Ghana's drop from 30th to 60th position on 2022 WPFI. That's according to the GJA president. There's also Supreme Court dismisses interlocutory injunction against application against Elevy, and 600 entities to go on GHNEPS by 2023. Let's check out that story on page 24 before we check out the middle spread of the paper. All right, so we're getting there. We're getting there now. So it says about 600 public entities are expected to be fully operational on the Ghana Electronic Procurement System by October 2023. That's according to the Public Procurement Authority. According to the authority, after October 2023, any entity that is not on the system would be slapped with punitive measures. Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the PPA, Kwame Prempeh, who disclosed these, did not mention the kind of punitive measures, but it was believed such entities would pay huge sums of money to have their staff trained to effectively use the system and be boarded onto the system. On that note, let me say good morning to Mr. Kojo Poku, energy analyst and an aspirant for the NPP's flag bearership slot. Mr. Poku, a very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Ben. How are you?
Hey, Mr. Poku, mente unkao waneno mente.
Well, Ben, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, loud and clear.
Hi, sorry. I had a very early meeting, so I've left the house. So it's unfortunate we have to do this thing by phone call.
Right, but it's fine. I mean, you can still we can still catch your thoughts. But thank you so much for joining us. I just want your take very quickly on the latest Press Freedom Index. I'm sure you followed the banter from the different sides, or the discourse, I should say, on the different fronts, and how every group is claiming we are the best, we are more tolerant, and all of that. Manasseh says he felt safer under the previous regime than under this one. In fact, that he's never felt as unsafe under any administration like he has under this one. Is it something you agree with? Because maybe I should just quote what he says, and maybe that would help the discussion. He says, I've been doing journalism since Kufuor, and in my view, Akufo-Addo's era is the worst for journalists in Ghana. Do you agree with him?
Well, I'm not a journalist, and I'm not in his shoes. So I don't know the threats that he faces. But for me, where I sit, I don't honestly think that I would agree with him. That does not mean that he is not going through what he's going through. Look, some of these index and some of these analyst surveys that they do is more of a perception. You know, perception is very key. Now, when a lot of people feel unsafe, it doesn't mean that they are not safe. It's they feel, so it's a perception, okay? Now, if one or two incidents happen and people now put a spin on it, then it now becomes that, hey, if you do this, this will happen to you. But meanwhile, it's not true. So my problem is the perception. And I think governments have to do a lot more to eradicate or make people feel safer. And I think
just quickly, Kojo,
the problem is.
Sorry to truncate your thoughts, but oftentimes, and I do accept perception is what it is, but oftentimes there is a fine line between perception and reality. Look at the corruption in our system. We cannot perfectly gauge the state of corruption, apart from maybe the Auditor General's report and this and that, and maybe a single country telling you we've imported X amount of gold, which is more than the entire report that we give as a country in terms of what we supply to the rest of the world. Some of those things may be pointers, but when you look at these, can you really say that they are not that reflective? When you consider some of the surveys that have been coming out on corruption, which we see, but there's not much because of the system we operate. And in this sense, the media, I mean, what must we see before we think this is a proper reflection or otherwise?
Well, like I'm saying, look, when somebody has an issue, how it is addressed is also go a long way. Now, Manasseh is unsafe, or he doesn't feel safe. Now, if he doesn't feel safe, has he reported it? How was it treated? When people have concerns, how do you treat the concern? Is it basically brushed away, or is it dealt with effectively? So I think.
Can I give you a brief answer?
Say that again.
Can I give you a brief answer?
Yes.
All right. So referencing Manasseh, he says when he did the Ford saga, the Ford Explorer story, you remember businessman, I think Burkinabe businessman, Kanazoe, that then information minister Omane Boama called him and said, the story, we didn't really, and we feel it will do damage to us. So let's give you police protection per his, latest piece. And he said, I don't need it because I don't feel threatened. He says, juxtaposing that with recent events where he had to even leave the country at a point because he felt unsafe, it's very different for him. That feeling was different then, it's different now. How do you reflect on that? Because that's exactly what you're talking about.
There are psychopaths. There are people. Look, I have many a times said that most of the people doing some of these things are not even in government. You see, party supporters have put on themselves this thing of, it's our government. So, they are the ones. So for me, like I said, look, I'm not in Manasseh's shoes, and I sympathize with how it feels, because if everybody feels unsafe, look, right. I've been engaged on radio and TV for about 10 years now.
Right.
If at any point in time, because of my commentary, I feel unsafe, then it will be a problem. So if he is doing journalism, and I appreciate the journalism he does, because I think investigative journalism in Ghana is missing. Most 90% of journalism in Ghana is people chasing what the political people are saying. Only a few people are really picking a story, investigate it, put it out there, and just bring a discourse. So, look, perception is what it is. But I think the government should do more to basically make people feel safer, even if it is just a perception. But I think, Upon Kroma listens to your program a lot, and I think he, being a former journalism, should do more to make people feel safer.
All right. And just to wrap the conversation on that bit, when you look at the trend and things that have happened, even in terms of the criminal libel law, which was repealed, and some of the actions and what is being used now in terms of, conduct offensive to the peace and some of the things we're seeing now with posts on social media and all of that, it leaves a lot to be desired. But I had a question that I posed earlier. Who determines how free the media is? Media people or maybe the politicians? Are they to tell us whether we feel free or not? And the second bit, you mentioned that sometimes it is not these parties. I agree. It is not everything, every atrocity committed by some person that is from the party. Maybe some overzealous party member goes and does certain things. I agree with you. But how do they rein in these people? What happens after these people have stepped out of line? That is important, isn't it?
Yes, very important. That's why I raised that when these things come up, how it's dealt with. So, when somebody feels that they've been threatened, and in the first question that you now mentioned, how free? Look, let's also just oppose this conversation on the fact that social media is playing a lot of role in what goes out there. Now, people are hiding behind social media and basically putting faceless things out there that naturally you can't put out in print media, okay? Now, look, it basically unsettles the environment. Print media journalism and electronic media journalism, like the radio and television, are more sanitized.
Right.
Now, social media, it's not. People will just they will doctor things and put it out there as the truth. And people honestly believe it because they will go and take the emblem, they will go and take the letterhead, they will go and make it and put it out there. Now, that is what is unsettling the situation. For me, I think there should be more punitive actions against people on social media who are putting out fake news and untruth.
Right.
Okay? Because that is really unsettling the media space. Though it is not traditional media, it has come to be the mainstay of how a lot of these information also get across. So the freedom, really and truly, your personal freedom is where your nose ends.
Right.
Okay? So if you are doing something that is offending the next person, I think that people should go to court on individual levels to say that, look, you've done this to me. I feel that...
And that precisely is the point. People feel that where some people have been arrested, incarcerated for periods, we should have simply used the law. You've insulted someone like the First Lady. If you feel aggrieved, the right place to go is the court, not for people to be apprehended and all sorts of things to happen. But to move the conversation forward, just very quickly on this, you're aspiring to be president of this country. You're aspiring to be flag bearer of the NPP. What would you, given the opportunity, do differently in terms of media freedom? What would you do differently?
Well, for me, I think that I will crack very hard on social media on truth, and because now
you would go hard on social media.
Oh no, on truth and fake news. Okay, because that is what is distorting the space.
Right.
Now we're going to have digitization where everybody who's going to have a mobile number is going to have a Ghana card to go with it. Okay? So it's easier to track these things which is put on social media. Now, people don't seem to realize that social media is a footprint. If you upload something, they can find you. In Ghana, CID has a unit that can track whoever posted whatever on social media.
Right.
So for me, I think if you sanitize and basically bring punitive actions to clear the untruth and the fake news and the manipulation of events on social media, the print media...
But what is fake news? I mean, how do you arrest people for if they genuinely felt something was right at the time of posting and all of that? Are you not going to take us back to the era of the criminal libel law?
It's not somebody sharing an opinion. What I'm talking about is people actually taking letterheads, which are not true, to publish things, people actually manipulating Twitter accounts to put information out there only to check it's not true. I'll give you a typical example. There was a time that His Excellency John, what do you call it, JDM, John Dramani Mahama, there was a Twitter information put out there. I went to his Twitter page and it wasn't there. But they designed the Twitter page to make it look like that tweet came from him. Those things are malicious. And I think those are the things that we should stop the youth from doing. And it is a trend that is coming up. Okay? People are able to even do letterhead of communication to put information out there only for the government to come out and say that, look, this is fake news. Those are malicious. So for me, I think if you crack down on that space, which is social media, you crack down on that, then the print media is more sanitized. And because, look, let me give you an example. Most things being printed on online and print media is now emanating from Facebook and these other places.
Right.
Okay? So there are some things that are not true, but because the person sees the source on social media, they also print it. Okay? Because I've said that 24-hour news media is difficult because you need to find information every minute to keep your viewers or your watchers attractive to your page or to your online portal. So people are searching for information all over. So somebody could put fake news on Facebook, then somebody will pick it up and print it as truth. But it's not.
So your point is clear on that. Should we give you the nod? Should your party give you the nod? And should ordinary Ghanaians give you the nod? You would crack down on untruths on social media.
On social media, yes. Right. That for me is very disturbing.
Let's look at some other stories from the rest of the papers in the next few minutes. Nonuplets in perfect health on first birthday. The BBC has been carrying the story about Moroccan Nonuplets, 9. Yeah, a 26-year-old woman gave birth to them. And I listened to their father yesterday, Abdelkader Abi, an officer in the Malian army. It's not been easy dealing with 9 babies at the same time, a year on. You can check out that story on page 5 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. The Daily Guide, and I'll go through the papers very quickly because the rest of them basically go back to what we've already mentioned. Supreme Court boots NDC's 7-0 over Elevy, and churches in Accra excluded from ban on drumming and noise making. There's also Young Democrats honor Nana, and beware of Mahama Elevy scam. Quickly on that, John Dramani Mahama and the NDC say they will quash the Elevy should they, assume the reins of power in 2025. Is that objective? Is that patriotic? What do you think about it? Is it the right thing to do?
You come and speak to the numbers. Look, I put something out in the social media a couple of days ago, and it's on Ghana Web, and I said that, look, if we are at a crossroads, John Dramani Mahama, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, is not the one that will ask for direction, because he's led us on the wrong path before, and I don't think we can go back to him to ask to show us the direction at crossroads. Okay? Now, in the Elevy conversation, if they claim, and that's their stand, and they want to put their hand on it that they will scrap Elevy, my question is, how will they make up the revenue shortfall? This talk of cutting losses and cutting and all those things does not make up the revenue shortfall. Because, you see, there are two sides of the conversation that I have always said. There's revenue and there's
pointed out, Kojo. They've pointed out, like you have pointed out in the past, that there are alternative streams of revenue for the state, yes, and that electronic revenue should never have been taxed in the first place.
Yes, and yes, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is that if you want to scrap the Elevy is going to bring in revenue. So what alternative revenue would you bring in? You saying that you're going to basically cut expenditure and not do that and not do that. What, as a government, if John Dramani Mahama was to come into office today, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is to come to office today, he will only have 17 billion as money in his kitty that he has to spend.
Right.
Okay, because a possible revenue is 70 billion. Tax interest on loans is 24 billion. Salary, government wage bill is 32 billion. That makes it 56 billion. Out of the 70 billion, you only have 14 billion as your expenditure. If you are going to take out Elevy, my question to him is that how do you want to raise extra revenue? How are you going to do that? Okay? So that is the question they should answer. If you take out and you're going to scrap Elevy, fine, we'll clap for you. But how do you raise the extra revenue? Because you need the extra revenue. The existing revenue will not be enough for you to rule this nation if you intend to do any developmental agenda for the country.
Okie doke. Let's take a quick look at this comment coming through from Solomon Nyantechi. And he says, while I cannot blame those who believe our Supreme Court operates in a predictable environment, I believe that those who file cases there, particularly the NDC, should bring not only lawyers, but at least some evidence. The AG was able to demonstrate, mind you, this is what he says, the AG was able to demonstrate that Parliament had a quorum for the e-levy's approval last night, but the NDC lawyer failed to show his numbers in court. Please don't think that if you lose, it will just feed into general perception and that there will be no preparation or nothing. So this person is saying the NDC has been shambolic. You don't prepare properly. You go to court. You don't have the evidence and you expect the case to go in your favor. So he's saying the NDC is doing a poor job in court. That is what he is saying right there. The Daily Statesman, NPP cautions against Mahama's scam e-levy promise. And President Akufo-Addo receives Africa Peace Award and government seeks to improve on press freedom. Maybe we should do that story on page 2. So it says, the Young Democrat Union of Africa has conferred the Africa Peace Award on President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for his enormous contribution to the growth and sustenance of peace and freedoms, not just in Ghana, but the West African sub-region and Africa as a whole. The award was presented on behalf of the union by Stephen Harper, former Prime Minister of Canada and Chairman of the International Democrat Union, who was assisted by Mrs. Louisa Atta-Agyemang, President of the YDUA. So we are receiving an Africa Peace Award, the CEO of our country doing so. In the meantime, press freedom not going so well. We'll put that side by side. But let me just find out from you. It's interesting because in recent times, Kojo, we've heard from the Ashanti Regional Minister, Simon Osei-Mensah, who says a lot of the rot we're seeing in the country has to do with Christians. And come to think of it, consider our leaders throughout our history. Our presidents have always been Christian. People sometimes erroneously reference Liman. He was not Muslim, so to speak. He had his own mix of things going on, respectfully putting it. But he was not Muslim. So we've never had a Muslim leader. You put that also side by side with what we're hearing now. There's also the chairperson of the Kumasi Presbytery of the Global Evangelical Church who is blaming corruption in Ghana on the failure of the church to impact the lives of its members. Are these calls justified when they say that we, Christians, are to blame for not just corruption, but where our country is?
Well, I honestly, it's a difficult conversation that takes a long time to digest. I will take it from this angle. If you are to go to Islamic states, hardly do we have a lot of Islamic states that are practicing democracy the way we are practicing it. Mostly Christian countries practice the democracy that we are practicing. And the level of press freedom you want, the level of liberties that we want, all those things is normally within Christian countries. Now, are Christians faith, people who follow the Christianity faith, are they a good example of what we should be in society? That conversation me and you can have for like 10 days and we'll still not get to the answer. I have a simple take. Politics and religion are cousins. Okay? They have both piggybacked each other at every point in time in history. There are times when religion has brought politics to a certain point, and there are times that politics have brought religion also to a certain point. People feel confident in their faith, and they think that the faith to God is where it ends. But you see, we hold dear one book, which we call the Bible. I honestly believe that too much emphasis is put on what is written in the Bible than an individual doing right by himself and by his neighbor.
Right.
Okay? So everybody you can justify any action in this world from the Bible, be it Old Testament or the New Testament. Slavery was justified in the Bible. Okay? When the Southern
within a certain context.
Say it again.
Within a certain context.
Within a certain context, yes. But the Bible...
Just as polygamy was justified in the Bible within a certain context, in the New Testament, Jesus would come and say it was only allowed because of your stiff-neckedness.
There are in the Bible that you could probably... Somebody will probably justify to you why he can sleep with a lady and not necessarily marry that lady. And you go to Deuteronomy and it's there. Okay? So there is everything in the Bible. And that is why it's a very, 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 very controversial book that we have.
Right.
So people take it and basically use a part that favors them to basically go to the altar. Now, this level of leadership, let's look at the so-called pastors that we have today. Some pastors, okay? Some so very extreme in this country, but some not so great.
Okay.
Let's be honest. So if we have a church or we have faith that the leadership of the church itself is compromised in certain aspects of it, then it's to act. Because we've seen all sorts of acts. People actually putting people on the floor. People doing all sorts of manners and using the Bible as a justification. So for me, if you want to have that discussion that Christians are the most corrupt or the people corrupt, it's a conversation that's dicey. But for me, I just think that the common goal that everybody should have is do right by yourself and treat thy neighbor as thyself.
All right, the golden rule. Well, thank you, Kojo, for joining us, for doing right by us and joining us, though we had to reach out to you rather late. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day.
Very much.
All right, that was Kojo Poku, energy analyst. And just before we wrap up, one last comment. Kwame Anojo says, the sad part too is that the NDC is not even prepared for power. Certainly, it's likely the NDC will not win the election in 2024 because the MPP will do everything possible to break the 8. We'll see how that cookie crumbles in 2024. But right before we go, we have a very special one we have to do. Danicia Ajwa Poma Ajay. She celebrates her silver jubilee today. And it is indeed a beautiful day. Poma is right here with us at the Multimedia Group. We celebrate you for who you are, what you stand for, and for the many smiles you put on our faces. Happy birthday, Danicia Ajwa Poma Ajay. And we wish you the best of this year and the years to come. Up next, we have sports with Oreku Ampofo. And last night, hey! Oh, I'll never support Manchester City again. I'm a die-hard Red Devils fan. I decided to support Manchester City. And the decisions after 70 minutes, God bless Kyle Walker. As for Pep Guardiola, he can walk away. Sports is up next. Do stay. All right, so we get into two crucial issues as we talk about the political ping pong between the NDC and the MPP. I did better, you fared worse, and all of that. We'll get into that, but we'll start by talking about the injunction application, interlocutory injunction, which has been thrown out by the Supreme Court by a unanimous decision of 7-0. How did things pan out? People have sent in messages this morning saying that the NDC is not doing enough in court. But is that the reality? We're joined by one of the core members who put this petition forward at the Apex Court, Mahama Ayariga. He joins the conversation. A very good morning to you, Mr. Ayariga.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation. Thank you for being with us this morning. And let me also start by apologizing for keeping you waiting.
That's okay.
All right. Mahama Ayariga is also Member of Parliament for Boku Central. What is your reflection following the motion you put before Parliament to stay the process of the e-levy? The rollout was started, And then we were told yesterday in the ruling delivered by the Apex Court that it would have caused great harm to the state by putting or accepting that injunction. And for that matter, as one of the ratio may not be out, but on taking note of that, your injunction has been thrown out. How do you feel about that?
It's unfortunate. We were very confident that the court will balance things more in favor of the Ghanaian public,
right,
than the government. Precisely because we think this is a constitutional matter, and being a constitutional matter, I think it shouldn't be about the money per se. It should be about the principle that law is being passed in violation of the Constitution. So we were expecting that the court will rather injunct government and wait for us to resolve the issues expeditiously. I don't think that it is practically possible that if several millions of Ghanaians through several million transactions get their monies deducted, the GRA has that infrastructural capacity, the technology, to be able to reverse and refund the monies. I mean, as we speak, because of the technological challenges in implementing this e-levy, they are staggering it. So that is an admission of the technological challenges involved in implementing this legislation. So I do not see how it is going to be easy to reverse the transactions several weeks or months after the monies have been collected. So I thought that the balance would have been in favor of holding on with the implementation of the levy, and then subsequently, depending on how the matter is resolved, we don't know the way forward. But the court thought otherwise and ruled against us. We are bound to follow the decision of the court.
You're going to follow the decision of the court. In my earlier interaction on the news review, I noticed some people sending in messages that for you, the NDC, you are not doing enough in court, that the AG seems to come clothed with facts and figures and the right things, following the right processes in court, but that you as the minority, you're not getting things right in court. That is why you keep getting 7-0, 9-0, and other results in court. Is that the real picture?
Well, I mean, the AG really has done nothing in court. The AG has not even filed their statement of case in response to our statement of case. They have not. They only filed an affidavit in opposition to our statement, our rate, and our application for interim injunction. And so they've really not taken any significant step. They only opposed the injunction application, and the argument was simple, that more harm will be caused to the state than to we, the applicants, and a very simplistic argument that if the GRA did not take the money, it is more likely that they will lose the money forever if we don't win. But if GRA took the money, it's more likely that the money can be refunded to citizens if we win. So
you call it simplistic. Does that mean it is not logical for you? Because the word simplistic itself has its own meaning. So are you saying that you feel it wasn't a well-reasoned decision?
Well, I mean, the argument is quite simple, isn't it? And I'm responding to the criticism that the AG was there back with figures and this and that. I mean, there were no figures. I mean, basically, it was just the simple argument, and the court bought into it against our argument that harm will be caused to the Constitution if a law that is not consistent with the procedure for passing laws is allowed to be implemented when its legality is being determined in the Supreme Court. So honestly, I mean, this is a very simple argument. Even though the court bought into it in its simplicity, you can't deny the fact that it's quite a simple argument. And that was what the court bought into. So we are doing all that we can. People shouldn't forget that the minority with a lower number in parliament fought Elevy for 5 months. It took the NPP going to the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and ultimately to the Supreme Court to disable one of our colleagues.
Hello, Mr. Ayariga, are you there?
Which undermined our numbers when they went to court and then disabled one of our colleagues. And that was what weakened.
You're referring to James Jatikwese.
Yes. So that undermined our capacity to keep fighting in terms of numbers and to resort to a legal strategy.
Right.
So we will keep fighting. I don't want to impute any ill motive to the bench. I don't want to say that the unanimous decision of the court, is informed by any other consideration beyond their appreciation of the law. But the substantive matter has not been
and we'll get to that
resolved.
Respectfully, Mr. Ayariga, we'll get to that shortly. But
yes.
Were you disappointed that here was another unanimous decision against you? I mean, if there had been a bit of a change of sorts, would that have carried some favor with you? Would that have been more placable for you if it hadn't been another 7-0 result in court?
Well, I mean, anytime that you have some dissent and there are one or two judges agreeing with you, it gives you some satisfaction, even though the ultimate satisfaction is when you win. But again, if they are unanimous, there isn't much you can say beyond just, as a lawyer, coming to a conclusion that they were probably all agreed on their position, and that is it. I'm not one of those who like to criticize judges on radio and on television. As a lawyer and an officer of the court, I think that it will be unacceptable for me to be criticizing judges. I should focus on the judgment and not the judges.
Let me put this quote to you and ask you about what next you'd be looking at. As per the Daily Graphic this morning, and as the court stated, if the e-levy is declared unconstitutional and thus null and void, the sum deducted could be refunded by the GRA. On the other hand, if the levy is injuncted by this court and at the end the applicants fail in their substantive case, the GRA will be unable to recover the levies applicable. That is very rational, right?
To be frank with you, I am not about to fight the simplistic conclusion of the court. I just believe that knowing the way our institutions function, that is a very remote possibility that the GRA will ever be able to refund to several millions of Ghanaians the deductions that may run into several millions, because people transact on a daily basis. Sometimes one person can transact 10, 20 times a day and multiply by several millions of people transacting over several weeks and possibly several months, depending on when the court concludes this matter. I doubt if GRA has the technological capability of reversing and reimbursing people. I mean, what has been the track record of this country in terms of tax refund? What has been the track record? And in court, we argued. We said, look, even last year, the Auditor General, reported that monies kept in the accounts of GRA meant for refunding taxes, has been misapplied. We argued that in court based on the Auditor General's report. And we said, look, this country's track record in terms of tax refunds is not the best. So you can't count on that.
Mr. Ayaga, let's put this into context. The EMIs who are handling this as it is now for the telcos, you have Mobile Money Limited, for example, for MTN. They have started the process already of doing this. In fact, I am looking at one such refund which was shared with me yesterday, and it says payment received for 75 pesos from Elevy refunds bulk account. The date, the 4th of May 2022. The time is there, and the person's current balance and everything is shown there. So what really is the problem? Because they have shown commitment to the fact that if people, it is confirmed that the e-levy should have never stood, people would get their refunds. So where lies the problem?
That is if the money has not yet been squandered. You see, if the court has said that the telcos should collect the money and keep it until we have resolved this matter,
right,
and then they can then pass it on to government if government is the winner ultimately. But they haven't said that. In fact, what they have said is that government can collect the money, government can use the money for development purposes, and if finally we conclude this matter and then it is in our favor, government will refund the money that they would have already squandered. I mean, look at the level of indebtedness of government to the international financial system, to our domestic banks, to bondholders, and etc. Look at the level of indebtedness. If they take this money and they squander it, how do you expect that they will find the money to refund to
Mr. Yariga,
to people? So if they had said, oh, this money should be kept in a special account, so that when this case is concluded, we will decide where it should go to. That would have provided some greater security for this money.
So just to clarify, so it means you would have been satisfied if they had given this alternative that you can collect, but let it be in some pool and not be expended until the substantive case is looked at.
I don't believe in the security of this money if it already gets into the hands of government and government utilizes it, and then we come and say they should refund. I mean, government is already reeling under huge debts, huge obligations and liabilities that they cannot handle. They are looking for money everywhere to borrow to deal with current expenditure. And then you now burden them with a refund of several hundreds of millions of cedis, presumably. I mean, you will be asking for the impossible.
So tell me, it means that what you're saying is you are afraid, as of this point, that should the court even rule in your favor, government would not be able to refund the money.
I doubt if they...
I didn't quite catch that, Mr. Ayariga.
In our favor. I would just be happy that they have ruled in our favor, and then we will stop collecting the money. But as for what has been collected, I doubt if it will ever find its way back to the Ghanaian citizens. And that is where I think the court might have miscalculated.
The court might have miscalculated. Right. How optimistic are you that, the other case, the substantive case, could go your way?
Very optimistic, very optimistic. I think that when they go into the issues and they do some more research in terms of the workings of Parliament and apply it to the interpretation of the Constitution given by they themselves in the Justice Abdullahi case, they will realize that the requisite quorum at the time of taking decision was not there. I mean, very simply put, the Supreme Court said you have to be 138. The AG argues that at the time of taking the decision, the requisite quorum was 137. Let's even assume that the AG's position is right. The facts are that the decision in Parliament was taken by a voice vote. It is clear, there's clear evidence that one MP who was sick and was in the clinic of Parliament was not in the chamber. And so the majority could only have had 136 people in the chamber at the time of the voice votes. So his voice was not added to the voices. So clearly, there were only 136 in the chamber at the time that they took the decision, in clear violation of their constitutional position that they needed to be 138. Even if we took out question and the overall number of parliamentarians reduced, they needed to be 137. So if they really are true to the facts and faithful to the facts of what happened in Parliament, this case should go in the favor of the applicants.
Okay. Tell me, let's go back a notch. When you look so far at the implementation of the e-levy, with what we've seen, people being charged where they shouldn't be charged, refunds now going in, the fact that until July, we're not going to see a full integration of the EMIs into that, singular grid and all of that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this rollout as it is, as of today?
I'm not among those who are interested in the discussion of the rollout. I take a position that it is illegal, unconstitutional, should not be accepted, should be stopped, and that is why we are in court. And so I'm not about to discuss the rollout. If anything at all, these challenges point to the weakness in the court's decision that, they should deduct and later on there will be a refund, because these current challenges show that there will be technical challenges in implementing a refund order of the court.
Let me ask you this bit. So your flag bearer in the past election, has said that should your party come to power again, you will scrap the e-levy. Looking at all these dynamics and the situation, we find ourselves in, even if you inherited this economy, would that be viable? Would that be prudent to do? Is that something you actually mean to execute as a party?
Of course. It's a commitment that our party is making. And the former flag bearer is definitely a key spokesperson of the party. And what he says reflects the thinking of the party. So I can assure you that, as promised, the NDC will scrap it. And it is viable because every indication is that our current crisis is not informed by the lack of adequate taxation. A lot of it is a function of our failure to collect the tax that is already due. And, wastage. And if we just take the Auditor General's reports and we address the concerns expressed in the Auditor General's report, if we cut down on waste and we cut down on inefficiency and we are aggressive in terms of tax collection, we will make up for the amounts of money that e-levy is going to rake in without doing the damage to the overall economy that e-levy will do. One major drawback of this, our economy, has been its informal sector. And over the years, digitization investment has aimed at bringing in the informal sector into the formal sector by digitizing them, recording them, and getting them formalized. What e-levy is going to do is to drive all of them away, or a majority of them away. So all the investments we have made into trying to capture the informal sector will suffer a terrible blow. And yet the amount of money that we're going to take from e-levy will not be able to make up for that loss. So net-wise, we're going to lose.
Mr. Yariga, just do me a favor, hold for me, briefly, hold for me. I have a final question for you, but not to answer now. Just reflect upon it as I bring in another guest who joins the conversation. When I come back to you, Mr. Yariga, I would want you to address your alternatives. If you take out the e-levy, what would be your replacement, or how would you fill the gap? But just hold on to that. Hold on to your thoughts on that. We're also joined by Joseph Kpemka former Deputy Attorney General. Mr. Kwamkpa, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Good morning, my brother. Good morning to the Honorable Ayariga. Good morning to your cherished listeners, and thanks for having me.
Great. The Supreme Court ruled yesterday on the first case of an interlocutory injunction on the e-levy, and they said no way. In fact, in delivering part of their reasoning, they said it would cause quite a bit of hardship to the state. And they are also suggesting that if the e-levy is declared unconstitutional and null and void in the substantive case, then a refund would be given to people. I know, how do you reflect on that ruling? Because others too have said, like you've heard Mahama Ayariga say, he says he doubts that the state would have the capacity in the current economic situation to even give a refund if we get there.
Thank you very much, my brother. And when the rate was filed, I was called to another sister station and I commented on the matter.
Right.
And I did some analysis. But it does appear to me that the opinions I expressed are reflecting clearly in the ruling of the Supreme Court on the matter of the injunction.
Oh, so what you foresaw is what the Supreme Court has said?
Absolutely. In fact, verbatim, I must say. Because, you see, the Honorable Ayariga, a brother of mine, knows that there are some basic principles that guide any court in the grant or refusal to grant an injunction.
Right.
And the courts have never departed from those basic principles.
Right.
Those basic principles are that, one, whether or not the grant or refusal to grant will cause an irreparable damage to one of the parties.
Right.
Now, this irreparable damage principle is very clear. Whether at the end of trial, when a party succeeds in vindicating its rights or getting its relief, ordinary compensation in the form of damages or etc. could be enough to assuage the suffering of the person. And also, they have this other principle, which the courts have time-tested, also applied. Whether or not, in the circumstances of the matter, the grant or refusal to grant the injunction could prejudice the outcome of the main case itself, and etc. In fact, there are quite a number of reasons they consider. But what I looked at was, you see, if they had granted the injunction and they went into stopping the implementation process, and at the end of the day, the fundamental question which the court raised, and which I agree with them without adding a single word, is assuming the state succeeds when the injunction had been granted. And so for the period that people did transfer money, you can never ever recover that which has been lost. That is irrecoverable. Flip it on the other side. The court says, and I agree with them again, that should it happen that the plaintiffs succeed in asserting their rights and winning based on the relief they are seeking in the honorable court, an order of refund can be made. However difficult you think the implementation process is, the telecus, and then the companies that have been mandated to do the collection will come to put their heads together, and of course, it's technology, be able to refund to the various individuals who transacted within the period. So that is possible. You may argue that it will be a Herculean task and it is difficult, but it's possible. But the other one is not possible, because remember that you cannot, after the end of the judgment, say that, look, all those who transacted between this period and that period when we were supposed to implement and it wasn't implemented, government go collect money from them. That would sound ridiculous.
Because the law in itself is also not retrospective.
Absolutely. That's the constitutional principle.
Right.
So what they have said is sound, and I don't think that we need to belabor the point. What is important is that that was without prejudice to the outcome of the substantive matter. Because the substantive matter itself has to be dealt with. And if they succeed, as I indicated, in proving their case before the honorable court, their rights to be vindicated. So it doesn't actually hurt the case of the plaintiffs in the circumstances of this matter. So I think that in discussing it, we need to situate it within the context of time-tested principles for the grant or refusal to grant an injunction in any court.
Right.
And those are the principles the court actually applied in this matter.
And we are very grateful for the context because, yes, as we know, there is quite a bit of a yardstick when it comes to granting injunctions because it shouldn't be to too much of a detriment or the detriment of one party. You've stated that clearly. But interacting with Mahama Yariga, he also makes mention of the fact that for the substantive case about whether this entire approval of the bill, passing it into law, was legitimate, he says he is optimistic that they would get a ruling in their favor in court. What do you make of that?
Well, I think, my brother, again, somebody I respect so much and I love so much and I admire so much as a brother and a friend. I think he has veered into the arena of sub judice, unfortunately, because he's prejudicing the outcome of the case, unfortunately.
But wait, Mr. Kwemka, you're saying he's prejudicing the outcome of the case, but when you were on a different platform espousing some of the thoughts that the Supreme Court has now espoused, that was not,
Hold on. You see, the Supreme Court has been very clear that parties today, I'm not a party. I'm not in the Attorney General's office. I am not part of the plaintiffs. I can critique.
But you're a lawyer all the same. You're a lawyer all the same. And a former deputy AG, what you say carries a lot of weight.
I do agree with you. So what did you hear me say? That I discussed effectively and concluded, because what I did was that, let me tell you, I gave out in that analysis I told you, the basic principles for the grant or refusal to grant an injunction. And I situated it within the context of the matter, but I didn't judge that, therefore, this party will lose and this party will win. But I gave it within a context. Context means that I explained the principles for the grant of an injunction and situated it within the facts of the present matter. But that's not even the matter, because the Honorable Ayariga did not go to court to lose anyway. He didn't go to court to lose. He went to court to win. The point is this, that the substantive matter itself, and again, I'm going to raise issues that I'm not going to draw any conclusions at the risk of sounding sub judice. Now, when you look at the particular circumstance of this matter, and again, if you look at the operations of Parliament, you either do voice vote or division and etc. And the time when somebody calls for or challenges that there is no quorum, same is taken into consideration and the number of persons present is counted and recorded. Now, in this matter, they started with quorum. I think 160 plus MPs were present when they started. Now, at the time the question was put, was there a challenge and leading to a situation where they recorded the number of persons who were present at the time the question was put? Fundamentally, was there a challenge? And did the Honorable House record that at the time that the question was put, there were 136 members or 135? The reason I'm saying this is that if you come to that conclusion and it's not on record, it remains in the realm of speculation and conjecture. That's the point. So when you conjecture and speculate without specifically stating on record what is recorded, it means that you are not doing your case any good.
Okay, so
okay?
Mr. Kwemka, just to conclude, in maybe some 20 seconds or less, so on the back of what you've seen, as far as the injunction is concerned, are you optimistic, or do you think that based on the facts available, you will sail through and the e-levies implementation will continue?
Well, I'm not able to draw that conclusion. I leave that to the court. But from the discussions that we are having, the public can come to that conclusion on their own. But okay. I can say that, well, the parties are there and they have the opportunity to vindicate their rights. they should be given that opportunity, and the Honorable Court has so done. At the end of the day, the Honorable Court is going to arrive at the decision based on facts and law. Facts and law. They will look at the facts on the ground in Parliament, what reflected that day, and they will apply the law as they have rightly invoked under Article 102 and 104 to vindicate their rights and etc. So I have no qualms with it at all. And as I've indicated, I'm unable to come to a definite, conclusive determination on the matter because
and I
am not the
understand
court.
you. I understand you. Senior, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
It's been my pleasure, my brother.
Right. Joseph Kpemka is a former deputy AG. I'll conclude with Mahama Yariga, who is still with us. So I remember I had posed that question about what your alternative would be to the e-levy to fill the revenue gap very briefly, and please deliver your concluding comments as part of that, maybe in some 2 minutes max. Do we have Mr. Yariga with us? Hello, sir. Can you hear me, Mr. Yariga?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Did you get the question?
Yeah, but I thought I answered that question. I told you that if we just manage ourselves more efficiently, we'll be able to cover the revenue gaps that not imposing e-levy will address.
Okay.
We should just connect our revenues more efficiently. We should cut down on wasteful expenditure.
Okay.
And we should just be inefficient in the running of our country. And I'm sure that we'll be able to make up as much as, e-levy could bring into the tax basket. So that question has already been answered. I mean, everybody has spoken about it. Experts have spoken about that. Development partners have spoken about that. That is something that everybody knows. It's just the way that we run our system. Oversized government, a huge wasteful expenditure, and tax collection systems that are so porous that a lot of cracks and a lot of transactions are going through. Tax holidays, tax exemptions, all those issues.
Okay.
If we just dealt with them alone, we'll be able to make up for what we'll get from e-levy.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. But again, this just comes to mind. My sincere apologies. I didn't think of this. The TUC is saying we should scrap petroleum taxes, all of them. Mr. President says it will amount to about 4 billion. Do you think that is something that your party, if you were to come to power, would jettison or get rid of, the taxes on petroleum products?
I don't announce party policies in television conversations. Party policies have to come from the top.
Okay.
And so I'm not in a position to declare a party position. I don't have that mandate in this discussion to tell you what the party position will be on petroleum levies.
Perfectly understandable. Thank you for joining the conversation. Mahama Yariga, MP for Boku Central, and one of the three, the triad, who put that motion before the Apex Court. But also joining the conversation, political scientist at the University of Ghana, Professor Ransford Jampo. Prof, a very good morning to you. Hello, Prof.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now. Because of where we started, I'll just take your quick thoughts on the latest Apex Court ruling saying that the injunction, as proposed by the NDC, in terms of the e-levy cannot hold. And their justification, the court's justification, in our opinions, greater hardship will be caused to the state in meeting its developmental obligations to the people. And it suggests if the e-levy is declared unconstitutional and null and void, the sum deducted could be refunded by the GRA. On the other hand, if the levy is injuncted by this court and at the end the applicants fail in their substantive case, which has to do with the validity of the process in Parliament, the GRA will be unable to recover the levies applicable. Your quick take on that?
Well, thank you. I think this may be a well-reasoned judgment from the judges of the Superior Court of Judicature. But I have a little problem, and I think there is a serious problem in Ghana now. Take note of this, that the NDC has been acerbic in its criticism of the judiciary, especially the unanimity with which they give their judgment, and yet still find the court as a place to go seek resolution of matters, tells us that the role of the court in preventing us from living in a jungle situation is indubitable and crucial. The courts are the only institutions that we have that can keep all of us together and prevent lawlessness. Unfortunately, there appear to be a perception of compromised judicial independence that is being deepened by the conduct and attitude of the ruling government and some of its officials. Now, they now have the penchant for publicly predicting the outcome of court processes, and their predictions have always come true.
When you say they have the penchant of predicting court decisions, whom are you referring to?
Well, you don't need a soothsayer to tell you this, but before this matter was decided, and then in the lead up to the decisions given by the court to other petitions that had been given brought before it, you had senior government officials publicly and openly telling Ghanaians that this matter will not go anywhere or this matter will go in a particular direction. And I'm thinking it is not good. See, the NDC may well have no case, but the way a manner government officials publicly predict outcome of court processes with certainty ahead of judgment fits into the perception of compromised judicial independence. Given the situation, you see, the predictions may be true. The other side or these government officials may well know the law and they can be able to say, well, this is how things may go. But given the fact that there is a perception of compromised judicial independence, you don't deepen that perception by making
So in other words,
public.
the public pronouncements must stop.
Even if you know how the matter is likely to go, they have no business coming out publicly to make such predictions. Because if you do that, then it tells people, those who have already a poisoned mind about the judiciary, that look, something untoward is going on. And I'm thinking that given the situation in which we find ourselves, the court must assert itself by finding a way to deal with these government officials who make such public pronouncements and predictions ahead of their judgment. Because it doesn't help. It doesn't help the quest to promote judicial independence. And I'm thinking that rather than the courts over the years being aloof about some of these things, they must also come out publicly to be heard on these matters because it doesn't help them.
Okay, very quickly on this one. So just last month in April, you said to me Ghanaians are losing confidence in the judiciary on the back of some of these matters. Do you feel this 7-0 ruling and the talk shop about it before the ruling goes to increase this perception?
Definitely, that's all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
The point is that I do not understand why some people who are very much seasoned in politics all of a sudden cannot act in a manner that can be described as politically appropriate. They are not being politically smart. And their comments in the lead up to court judgments are not politically wise. We are not talking law here. We are talking about politics and political science. The point is that given the situation in which we find ourselves, whether you like it or not, many Ghanaians or some Ghanaians are losing confidence in the judiciary. And you do not help matters by giving your own judgment and predictions ahead of time when a matter is before the court, especially when you are coming from the ruling party. You don't help matters.
Okay.
And so the practice where senior public officials and government officials will go and say this matter is outmoded at best, it will not go anywhere, and then truly the court would also give a unanimous decision in a manner that is akin to the predictions that may have been given, would always hurt the quest for us to get judicial independence. The judgment, I'm not questioning the judgment of the judges. If you read, I mean, the snippet of information that he gave to me tells me that, look, the judges have looked at the matters and they've given well-reasoned judgment. But the point is that every time these judgments will be in tandem with predictions of government officials, then you are not helping the quest to promote judicial independence, because you keep giving the impression that, look, there is something that senior members of the government do that all others, do not know. It doesn't help the quest to promote judicial independence.
To wrap the conversation, Prof, I want to pick your thoughts. We have the recent Press Freedom Index, and on the back of it, we've had a lot of comments or commentary from the minorities' end saying that this is the worst we've seen, and the end of the majority saying, no, that's not necessarily the picture, and that we're doing our best. In fact, there was a change in methodology as well. We've heard from Information Minister Kojo Ponkroma, we've heard from Communications Director Yahweh Avena-Asamoah of the MPP. But just a quick breakdown. This latest report pegs it at 60th position in the world. We were 30th the last time, now we are 60th. This is the worst performance in 17 years. And we've had people come out and say, yes, I'm a journalist, I do not feel safe. I've even seen comments, one Taufik on social media saying, I'm a student journalist and even I do not feel safe. The context of it, did Reporters Without Borders get it right? Is it a true reflection of what we're seeing in the country? And do you feel the NDC is justified when it says things were better in terms of press freedom during our tenure?
You see, my principled position has always been to be against some of these works and reports from foreigners. What is their locus in Ghana matters? And then also, who authorized them to come and conduct these studies?
Prof, they do this all the time. I mean, this is not the first time. They've been doing this for a long time. And it's global. We all react to it. Sometimes they rate the Western countries low.
Doing it all the time does not mean we cannot think to advocate for a halt of their dictatorship. It is neo-colonial for an independent sovereign country to always be dependent on the assessment and the comments and the evaluations of bodies that are found outside the confines of that sovereign state. It doesn't help our quest to assert ourselves as sovereign nation. You don't think that we have bodies in Ghana that can conduct study to independently assess media freedom and press freedom in Ghana?
I know, for example, that the Media Foundation for West Africa, Prof,
rely on assessment from foreigners. You see, regardless of whatever they say, my position is that foreigners have no business to come and tell us how we are faring in terms of our democracy and in terms of our quest to promote media freedom. They should stay away. We can do that ourselves.
All right. Just to chip in, the Media Foundation for West Africa, for example, has done work over the last how many years? And we all feed into it when they come out with their releases. Sometimes you would hear the CDD as well. But in our local context, and I again mention the Reporters Without Borders is a global entity. So when it comes to our local context, how different would it be? And what bodies would you want to go into this? The NMC?
Well,
the NMC, the leadership of some of these institutions, the problem is that the heads are politically appointed. That is also part of the problem. So which entity does that?
You may see, you have independent researchers in Ghana, okay? If you come to the University of Ghana, if you come to my Department of Political Science, we do studies that whose findings and whose content would cut across and encapsulate some of these things. And there are credible institutions or CSOs, there are credible non-state actors in Ghana that can conduct some of these studies and churn out results that you mentioned CDD. Okay? They can churn out results that are independent, that we can all describe as credible. I am not going into the content of what these people are saying. My position is for us to be nationalistic as a people and stop pretending that everything we do as a people ourselves are inferior, but those things that come to us, shrouded with some propaganda from outside, are the gospel truth.
So in this instance, do you find it to be propaganda? What it says about the picture of our country?
To the extent that you see, I don't think that they are telling us all the truth. They may have some findings here and there that may be reflective for situations, but the point is that it's not all the truth, and you have to find out their rationale and their motive.
Okay,
and the point that I want to insist on is that we should stop as a people, you guys in the media, we should stop putting a lot of emphasis of some of these findings coming from foreigners.
Okay.
We are a sovereign nation. Can you imagine? Can you have Ghanaians going to foreign countries to tell them the outcome of their own studies about those countries? What will be the premium that will be placed on those outcomes? And so why is it that for us, anybody can get up from his country and come and tell us some of these things?
But this is not anybody. You see, that is the context.
Even if they reflect the situation, I'm telling you that we have the capacity to do our own studies and unearth findings that will be locally brewed. And we must cherish our own, rather than always going for those things and those findings coming from outside.
Okay, so to conclude, Prof, I just want to find out from you. So what would be your assessment of press freedom in the country currently? Are we anywhere far from what this report says? I mean, what would be your candid assessment when you look at all the things that have happened in our context?
You see, a candid assessment can be done by speaking to pressmen and women in Ghana. When you speak to pressmen and women in Ghana, you sample them and you speak to them, you'll be able to do a candid and an objective assessment of the situation.
Okay.
We are yet to do that. And so we will do that and make our views also. I'm part of a certain research team that is auditing Ghana's democracy, especially under this current regime, and also taking a look at what we have achieved and what our gaps have been for the past 30 years.
Right.
At the appropriate time, we'll come out with some pronouncements, and this is a study that is being done from home. And so we'll be able to do that by speaking to the journalists themselves. And when we speak to the journalists themselves, their verdict would inform our conclusion. And so it is not up to any government official to say that what is going on is not true or it is true. It's not up to the opposition to also say, well, matters are worse or matters are better. It is up to the journalists themselves in an independent study. See, it is up to they themselves to voice out the issues. If they think that things are okay for them, so be it. If they think that they are being repressed or things are not okay for them, it will be something coming from the horse's own mouth. And that is what we can place much premium on, rather than sitting in our country and then relying on verdicts from bodies that are neo-colonial, in my view.
Prof, we're immensely grateful that you've taken the time to share these thoughts with us. And do have a good day, sir.
My pleasure.
That was Professor Ransford Jampo. He says it as it is. No holds barred. But do you agree? That's the question. And we'll be going on social media now to find out. Later, we'll activate the phone line. So we're looking at the e-levy and this bit about press freedom as well, and some of the thoughts that have been shared. Do you agree? Joining me in the studio, Bernice Abubeidu at Lansa. Hi, Bernice.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm okay. But listening to the conversations we've had thus far, I mean, from what you've gathered, what's your take? Look, you heard Prof say that he feels it's neo-colonialist and all of that.
Well, professor of politics, so well, that's how he perceives us. But we know Reporters Without Borders they do a lot of work in different parts of the world, and so this is their assessment, and they explain their methodology. Government has come to say, based on that methodology, we can't compare this particular ranking to earlier ones, as we've seen happening in the media, and even caution is given in that particular report on how the comparison should be done, and that caution should be taken. So there's a lot of discussion still happening around that particular report. But I mean, we speak to colleague journalists yesterday on PM Express.
He who feels it knows it, huh?
Exactly. Evans Mensah spoke to a couple of our colleagues who also shared their thoughts. But I think what the professor is saying is probably some academic work, that can also be documented and kept. It said this is the assessment by Ghanaian journalists themselves, or the media space they find themselves in. If it's about how we feel in the feedback, we do that every day. I mean, once we come on air, we talk about some of these things as and when they also happen. We bring it to the fore and have discussions with all stakeholders. And so I'm sure it's something, I mean, it's not a bad idea, is it? If we have a report collated by Ghanaian journalists on how media...
It gets me interested, not just the GJA, but we often talk about we're beholden to the Bretton Woods institutions, we're also beholden to... we actually apply when it comes to the Standard & Poor's, the Moody's and the Fitch reports. We apply for them. You're not compelled. But then there's Amnesty International, there are the corruption perception indexes, and then there is this as well. I was just thinking, if we had the Ghana Statistical Service as part of its yearly work, maybe that one I feel a lot more Ghanaians feel safe with. Every year, as part of the basket of issues you investigate, how about you add that when it comes to press freedom?
That's an interesting point. An interesting point to make. Maybe something they would consider. But apart from these issues that we've been discussing, there is also the issue about corruption. Ghana has been trying to solve that problem for quite some time now, and with the introduction of the special prosecutor, there's been a lot of expectation. Have those expectations been met? Well, we'll leave you to tell us what you make of that, because right after this, I'll be having a conversation on corruption. There's a presbyter of the EP Church who believes that the church should be blamed for the current situation in the country as regards corruption. Well, a lot don't agree. Some think she's right. We'll be back to have the conversation shortly. Thank you for staying on the show. You heard Ashanti Regional Minister Simon Osei Mensah, who says most alleged acts of corruption are perpetrated by public officials and civil servants purported to be Christians. You also heard Chairperson of the Kumasi Presbytery of the Global Evangelical Church, Reverend Dr. Rosalind Fuga, who is blaming corruption in Ghana on the failure of the church to impact the lives of its members. Well, our guest for this conversation is Reverend Dr. Kwabena Opuni-Frimpong. He's Executive Director, Alliance for Christian Advocacy Africa. He's also a former General Secretary of the Christian Council of Ghana. Great to have you here, sir. Do you agree with Dr. Fuga?
Yes, let me say good morning to your cherished viewers. And I must also say that when the regional minister was addressing the conference, I was in the room, so I heard him. I must say that when we talk about the place or the role of the church in the fight against corruption, we must put it into proper context. Now, the church, yes, pursue Christian education, discipleship, hoping that we will build up our members in matters of morality. What we must understand quickly is that when it comes to law enforcement, the church doesn't have the backbone. What the church does is admonishing people, do the right things. It is true that some members will listen to the teachings of the church and do the right thing. However, if we get some church members who, for whatever reason, decide not to be law-abiding, you don't go back to the church. You go to the law enforcement agency. In fact, when the regional minister said in the room that he doesn't sign check, and therefore, if it comes to corruption, we must go for the technocrats, I asked myself, what is his supervisory role? What does it mean to have the police, the CID, or the institutions that must be able to know that somebody is doing something untoward and bring them to book? And he pursuing that the report we received at Parliament from the Auditor General, the district chief executives in his region are brought to book. What is his role? I was sitting behind him and I kept my thought to myself, but to some large extent, I disagree with him. The church does not enforce laws. Our leaders, the political parties, must be willing to disown their members who are into corruption. If we focus on the church for the corruption fight, it seems to me we are not serious as a nation with the corruption fight.
Doc, perhaps you say that the church's role is to preach to its members, encourage them to abide by the law, but the church doesn't enforce the laws. Fair enough. Perhaps Dr. Fuga's concern is that the church is not doing enough when it comes to speaking boldly about these things and telling its members, do not involve yourself in this. Or, like you mentioned, if a member of a church has been found to be engaged in corrupt acts, is the church also willing to, quote unquote, disown that member?
In fact, we have, now that is to me the challenge we must address. We have political leaders that see corruption outside their circles. Corruption is in their opponent, their enemies, among themselves. You know, and normally when they are in opposition, they see corruption. When they are in power and government, they see themselves as angels, and the enemy is out there. We as a church or Christian body, yes, must continue teaching, but even whether those in government, those in power are prepared to listen to the church when it comes to matters of corruption. Whether they don't fight back, they want to hear what they want to hear. But that is what the church must avoid. The church must speak truth to power. Now when we are in election and we are having cheating and we are having violence, we don't go back to church. You talk about the managers of the country. You talk about managers of election. You talk about state institutions, security. You don't talk to church. When we have governments that are signing contracts, recently in Europe, you find a whole prime minister in UK that during COVID, he broke the law. He has been fined. I am praying and hoping to see government that would disown their own and allow their own to be punished. If you are not ready to do that, you don't go and find excuses and hide behind church. Faith-based organizations that can only admonish. So the church must not quickly accept the language the politicians are, throwing about. You have failed. They have failed. Corruption is among them, and they are covering their own. I pray and hope that parties, MPP campaign on corruption. Now let us see how they fight their own, not their opponents.
All right.
Now they are among themselves. You see angels. The enemy is out there. So churches must not easily accept that slogan.
All right.
Churches have not failed.
Okay. So, sorry that I had to interject you there. So, is the church doing enough? You've clearly spelled out, and that's fair comment to say the church cannot implement or the church cannot enforce the laws when it comes to corruption or put in structures that make it impossible for people to be corrupt. The church cannot do that. The state has to do that. The church's role is to advocates. The church's role is to preach to its members. My question, and I would like you to answer this as simply as possible, do you think the church is doing enough in that regard?
It depends on what you put into that concept, enough. I go to church every Sunday. I teach my members. Some will obey and go out and do what they have heard. That is church. Jesus says, those who have ears, let them hear. Others will go out and, like any children, parents will tell you, when you go out, don't do this, do that. Some will go out, do what parents have asked them to do. Others will go out and do the opposite. I expect that those who do the opposite, the system will correct them. I expect that those who enforce laws, they are driving roughly on our roads. Now you have political party MPP during constituency election. And look at what is going on. If they are Christians, they must arrest them. It has nothing to do with church. They are breaking laws. Arrest them, punish them. If government officials, whether they are church elders or whatever, are breaking laws, punish them. That has nothing to do with the church. So the church is doing enough. But enough depends on who you talk to. The politicians who are hiding behind something, they want something to hide behind, want to push the blame on the church. But church people must speak truth to power. They must tell that to them, that you signed a contract. You are awarding all the galamsey thing we are saying. It's not pastors who are doing it. You are doing. You know your people who are involved. You know all those who leave office and carry all the vehicles and other things. Now we say we have 12 billion cedis from the Auditor Generals. Go and chase them. They are your people. If they are not prepared to do that, it's just a pie in the sky cliche. It's a simplistic way of solving problem that if we are not having, we are not succeeding in the corruption fight, the church has failed. It's difficult to accept that.
All right, Doc. Now, we talk about the contracts that government agencies sign and all that. Aren't we oversimplifying the corruption problem? Because, and when we put it at the feet of the politicians, aren't we oversimplifying it? Because for people like Dr. Fuga, the everyday things we do, people walk into offices, go to the hospital, they want to get a certain favor, they give somebody a little here, a little there. Aren't these things all contributing to the endemic nature of corruption in our country? And these people who engage in these day-to-day activities, many of them sit in our churches every day, and they still go ahead to do these things.
No, let's get it. That's why I said let's put this discussion in context. I go to an organization, you mentioned hospital, any hospital, they have quality assurance department. If I was in hospital in South Africa, you enter, they give you color red, you move on, they give you blue, yellow, and green. And there's somebody's job is to make sure you don't exceed the time that you are supposed to be under color red, blue, and they will go straight to whoever is not making the system work. And that is not the job of the pastor. Quality assurance, law enforcement agencies, what are they supposed to do? So I'm saying that if I get a Christian who will allow the word of God to work in him or her and go to work to do the right thing, praise God. If I get another Christian who will go to work late, who will steal papers, who will use office time, even to attend prayer meeting, I will want discipline to be enforced. That is the problem we have in this country. We have, it's not only those at the top, traditional leaders on our roads, and you have politicians who will protect their own. Let them begin to disown their members, and it will be a lesson. But when I know that we finished election, and people who were into violence and all that are going around, and the law will allow them because they know my party is in power. You can do nothing to us. People are not working. You work with an accountant in the office, and he knows that he carries party card. There's nothing that those with supervisory role can do to him. Then you go back to the church. The system is sick. Ghana needs to be born again. Address that. We are corrupt society, but those who have the power to make the system sound must sit up and work. So when you leave them and you go to the church, those that have admonition role that do it, I will go to those who have enforcement role that sit up. You are failing us. You are signing contracts that are disgraceful.
Doc, I wanted a clear-cut response on my earlier question about whether the church is admonishing its members enough, because there are those who believe that the messages have changed over time. Even within the church, there are leaders who've had cause to complain about what they call the prosperity message, where it's as though having enough money is a validation of your faith or a validation of something you're doing right with God. So there are those who argue that these messages compel members to engage in some of these corrupt activities and bring money to the church, because sometimes in some churches, the more money you have, the more respect you're given, the more responsibilities you're given. So on the bit of admonition and the kind of messages the churches are given, are we also doing the best that we can?
I like that. And that is how I want to understand the EP minister's statement, that let us go back to the drawing board and find out, because there are new realities, emerging challenges, how we are responding to emerging realities. So the church must reposition itself to respond to emerging challenges and realities in our time. Having said that, we are talking about corruption fights. And as for that, look at the effort media people are making, whether it's cocoa that people are smuggling, whether it's galamsey. Some of them have been beaten, some of them have been in prison. Look at the effort certain individuals have made in our hospitals, people who are selling babies. Now that one, you don't go to church and ask, are we doing enough? You must ask, what are the intelligence institutions here for? In fact, there's something that we must be concerned about. There are so many issues until media people raise the issues. When media people raise the issue, then the CID and the police and all that will sit up. As if media is now doing the work that those who have been paid to do such intelligent work, media is doing for them. That one is not church. In fact, even Ghanaian media is going beyond, doing all this kind of work that people who have been paid. And even when they have done that, you find people who will still go and attack them, seize their gadgets. These are the things we are talking about. That one has nothing to do with church. They must be put behind bars. Even if they are pastors and they are misbehaving. This short period of IGP Dampare, and we pray that he stay focused, it doesn't change. Even pastors who were all over the place making noise and deceiving people, you realize that the tempo is going down. Let's allow the laws of this country to work. And the law must work for all of us, not some of us. And at the moment, sometimes you get impression that depending on who you associate with, you can do all the evil things and get away with it. That is the issue we must address. So yes, church may need to go back to the drawing board and reposition ourselves to respond to emerging realities. But the blame must get back to those who have the power to enforce laws and sanitize the situation. And I must say, I dare say, at the moment, we have a very worrying situation.
Interesting, Doc. We are getting live reactions to our conversation on Facebook, because we're on Facebook Live as well. And talking about repositioning, there are those who have the view that church leaders themselves sometimes create the perception that they are with certain governments. And so when government changes hands, then you don't have them speaking about the ills of society as much as they did when previous governments came over. Someone just commented about that. Your quick thoughts on that as well.
Especially in this country, I have had opportunity to serve as Christian Council General Secretary under NDC, and I have played some roles under the current administration. When they are in opposition, I have taken time. I recently gave public lecture at Koforidua. I have studied under the Fourth Republic and the past 10 years, issues that the churches have raised in their communique and public statement. They are the same. The themes are the same. The things that the churches talk about, church leaders talk about under NDC are not different from. But when you do that, they sent their wild dogs to come and attack you. And when the tables turn and you say the same thing, then they feel, no, why are you talking about sins? Don't talk about sins. The very people who were in opposition, who were clapping for you, and those who were in power, who felt that you are their worst enemies, now when they are in opposition, they fall on you. Why are you not saying this? Why are you not saying that? When they were in power, you said the same thing, and they were attacking you. They were insulting you. So our leaders are not ready for objective public discourse. That's the real problem. Now you find that the parties have set their members on Facebook, on social media. So you whisper, and quickly you know who is talking. You know where those statements are coming from. We need objectivity in public discourse in Ghana. It is not there at the moment. And especially media houses that are being controlled by politicians. Now media space has become another challenge, even for church leaders, because you are not sure the kind of editorial policies that they are running. So, yes, it sounds good to say those things, but it's difficult to travel far with such sentiment.
Talking about the media space, yesterday we had quite a lengthy discussion on press freedom and Ghana's recent ranking. Your quick thoughts on that as well.
I watched my brother Akapo and Professor Jampo. Yeah, Professor Jampo was saying that we must do our own internal assessment. I agree with him, but to a point. You see, I'm teaching at the university. At the university, whether you are assessing, say, PhD student, MPhil student, or even colleague lecturers for promotion, you do internal assessment, but you find independent external assessment as well. So I agree with him that we must do our internal assessment, but we must allow outsiders also to assess us. Now we have external examiners and others. So fine, you may not agree with them, but we need to appreciate external assessment on our performance. And that is the point. I find it difficult to continue the trip with Professor Jampo. Now, I may not go to that extent of what is in the report, but I have seen in whatever they call themselves, national security people attacking journalists in this country, all because they took pictures where they were not supposed to take pictures. They have been beaten. We have seen terrible things. Some of your friends at Multimedia, and their crime was that they were out there bringing stories for Ghanaians. That was their only crime. And that is where I will go and say that if we have, and you see there's a correlation between democracy and free speech. And if Ghanaian journalists are subjected to this, all their crime is going out there gathering information for the Ghanaian public to know. During the elections, some were beaten. And that is what we are addressing. So whether it's external or internal, there are existential facts, realities, that it's not easy for some journalists to do their work. There are those who are going overboard, sometimes if they are suffering from verbal diarrhea. That's not the group I'm talking about. But there are those who just want to go out, bring facts, and they are being attacked. They are being threatened. And if we want to do anything at all, that concern must be addressed. That one, it has nothing to do who paid for the research and all that. We know that there are journalists who have been sent in the name of national security, and they come out to give their report that we were mishandled. If these things are with us, it's shameful, and that democracy, free speech attack, we must be worried as a country.
Let's go back to a substantive issue on the church and corruption, even as we prepare to wrap up. The latest corruption perception index puts Denmark at the top in terms of countries with less corruption or perception of corruption. And in having this conversation, I just wanted to find out what the religious standing of its population was. And it's interesting to know that Denmark has about 77% of its population identifying as Christians, believing in Jesus Christ. Based on what we've said so far, you think that it is just too simple to correlate and say because a large percentage of the population is Christian, it would definitely translate into a good CPI score. I mean, looking at these two countries, Denmark and Ghana also has over 70% of its population identifying as Christians, but a CPI score is low. But for you, it is too simplistic to say the two correlate.
You see, you are talking about national values, ethical values. Ghana, what are our national values? What are the values that we cherish, that we teach, that are part of the curriculum we run in our schools? That is what you get in Denmark that you don't get here. What are the national values that we protect? That is why I have said again and again that education without moral and spiritual values will always produce intelligent criminals. Now go to those countries and they have national values. Go to Japan. Common humanity is core value in the curriculum in schools, right from primary one. They teach this. They don't only teach science and engineering and mathematics. They teach national values. They are core education. You are not only a medical professional, you are a human being. So they have factored, and those values are equally Christian values. So we must be very careful. If you are talking about Denmark and other countries that have been able to push such values of truthfulness, that if you are a leader, and now UK, if you're even a prime minister, and you break the law, they will fine you. Now find out what are national values, values that the president cannot break. And if he does, he will be dealt with. What are they? What are the values that our members of parliament should not break? And if they break, they will be dealt with. What are national values for traditional leaders? Even when we are writing examination, are we a nation with national values? Are we proud of our national values? What are they? Who are enforcing them? When and how? If we can answer the question, then we can do the correlation you are raising. Some countries, whether Christians or not, have been able to factor values, sound human values, into their national cycle. That is not what we are doing here. Now the thinking is give them science, give them engineering, give them aerospace, and Ghana will develop. You end up producing intelligent criminals. And I don't know how many we have produced so far.
Interesting, Doc. You talk about a national psyche and national values. How then do we integrate this into our society? Because clearly, I'm not sure that we have that as part of our curriculum, where across the board, we are instilling certain values that as Ghanaians, we have agreed that this is what we stand for, and every Ghanaian must identify with it.
I hope somebody will listen to you this morning. We have not seriously considered national values as a national issue. In fact, the issue we are talking about, corruption, moral decadence, has not been considered by our leaders, those in government, as a national challenge. They don't consider that as, in fact, they don't feel ashamed themselves. They pride themselves in corruption. They are thieves. That is the word we must now focus on. Now, how do we get people who get to public service to appreciate that the word is service? They don't go and take what belongs to ordinary people. Some of them even have legal backing. You hear allowances, people are being paid salaries, and they are getting drivers, they are getting vehicles, they are paying inconvenience allowance. Go to the nurses, hospitals, and feel what nurses and teachers are going through. Who pays them inconvenience allowances? But such things are backed even by law. Look at what is going on. When we are close to election, can you trust them? The monies they use for campaign, can they account for the money? How many of them send their financial report, the political party, to EC? And then you can trust that this is a true reflection. We have constitution that say that after every election, after some month, all of them must go and disclose the sources of the funds that they use for election. Have you heard that? You are a media people. What are our national values? What are they? Go to NPP and ask them that question. What are the values they are protecting? Ask NDC. They themselves, what are the ethical standards they have set for themselves? That if you are with me in my government and you go to US and other countries, they have ethics decks that any contract will be examined. Anything that the president does, is assessed. Do we have seriously ethical standard for ministries, for presidency, for parliament? What are they? And the question you are raising, I pray and hope that will bring us to a national conversation. What are our national values and how are we pursuing them? Now school children are going all up for a pop, and parents buy the questions for them. And when these people finish, what are the values you expect from them? And of course, church people, we are also part of it. But when it comes to corruption fight, it's a serious issue and it's beyond the church. So church people must be careful when they are coming to the conversation. Don't accept responsibilities that are over and above you. Corruption must be fought by those who have been given the mandate to do so. Church people, you don't have the power to imprison anybody. Talk to the right people to do the right things.
Doc, you mentioned allowances. And I remember when the conversation on neutrality allowances came up, the demand by ClockSAC, there were those who said this feeds into the perception then that once you become a politician, it means that you have access to some wealth, or it puts you at a certain position to make some money. And so once I cannot identify with the party, then you must pay me for it. Your quick reaction.
We must address. I teach with a colleague, say, at the university. We know the cars we've been driving. He jumped into politics as whatever. And within a matter of months, he's building, story building, building number 1, building number 2. He has parked the old, Toyota Corona he was using, and a Land Cruiser V81, and another. Now, if this is what politics and democracy means, then every Ghanaian must have that kind of resources. How come that people get into politics before 4 years? Why? How come, if this is the economy of Ghana, then let everybody benefit from the system? How come that people get into politics and overnight their economic situation has changed and changed? So we have a systematic problem that we have to address. Now everybody is jumping into politics. They are not there to serve. They know what they can get because the system protects them. And we need to address it. That's why there's the call for even constitutional review. But when they are in opposition, they see what is wrong with the constitution. When they are in power and it's working for them, they close their eyes. I have seen people who, when they were in opposition, were calling for order to be, things to be streamlined, security agencies. Now they are in power. And I doubt if they will ever address. We are still praying and hoping that they will begin, even to the civil service, that they will structure. But as long as it works well for them, that is where we find ourselves where we are. We have a challenge that has been infused into the system, and we need to address it.
And so are you part of those who say that approving or implementing this neutrality allowance then means that we are endorsing that perception?
In fact, it's not only that one. It's the whole Article 71. The whole Article 71. If it's not benefiting some people, we need a leader who will say that with the economic challenges we are going through, how do we pay somebody his or her main salary? With what kind of qualification? And we pay them their main salary. We give them wardrobe allowance. We give them fuel, free, whatever. They have drivers, and now you give them inconvenience allowance. So that one is just one of them. You your friend, one of them, Newsfire, listed the allowances. Go back to them. How many Ghanaians attract those allowances? And what kind of animal farm are we running at the moment? Are some Ghanaians better human beings than others? That some deserve inconvenience allowance, but those who are working under under the bridge and all that, how much do we give to them? The nurses, the doctors, those who are working in a mortuary hospital, how much inconvenience allowance do you give? And they come up to say, we receive 1,000 cedis a month. What kind of system are we running? And we must understand that democratic dictatorship in democracy as worse as military dictatorship. And we must be careful about dictatorship of the majority. We are gradually getting there. The dictatorship of the majority is as dangerous as military dictatorship. Now there are a group of people who know we can get whatever we want, and others are crying. So we must be careful. I have said it. I'm saying that majority dictatorship is as dangerous as military dictatorship. Let's avoid it.
We are not there yet. Are you saying we are there yet, or we are inching closer?
Sometimes you get the signals that if we don't do things right, we are getting there.
I appreciate your time this morning, Reverend Dr. Kwabena Opunufrimpong, Executive Director, Alliance for Christian Advocacy Africa. And we've been talking about the church and corruption because we heard from Reverend Dr. Fuga, who is a member of the Presbytery of the EP Church in the Ashanti region, saying that the church must be blamed for endemic corruption in the country. Well, Dr. Opunufrimpong disagrees. He says the church only has an admonition role, and it is the state and its actors who are responsible for implementing or enforcing the law. Let's get your opinions now on this, and also the Supreme Court case on that Elevy injunction that was thrown out, if I may say. The substantive case is yet to be heard. My colleague Kojo Brace is out, getting your opinions on this. Hello.
One is the fact that a woman of God is saying the church itself should be blamed for the level of corruption we see in Ghana, because the church has not done enough to ensure that corruption is nipped in the bud. What do Ghanaians also make of this? Again, the NPP and NDC have all been fighting for I am the best accolade, that everybody says, I am better at managing the economy. The NPP says, I am better than the NDC. NDC says, well, my statistics are better than you. So what do we all make of this? I am here and I'm engaging some Ghanaians. I'm starting with these two gentlemen, and then we'll get more thought as well. Chief, thank you very much for agreeing to speak to us. First of all, what do you make of the assertion that the church should be blamed for the level of corruption we see in Ghana?
Thank you, Mr. Boss. Honestly, for me, I do believe that what the man of God or the woman of God is saying is in the right direction, in the sense that churches, the pastors or the whoever is in charge over there has, must wait to the extent that most of the church members find it difficult the mission house over the routine and stuff. At the same time, some of the churches too have institutions like the universities and stuff, but most of the people in the church who are contributing to this development are not educated. Why am I saying this? I won't even cite any example, but where I used to worship, due to those things, have stopped worshiping because of those things, because they extort much from us without helping we the needy. So I think the person who said that has the right and is in the right direction to say that. That's my opinion on that issue.
But that you are talking about the man of God, the pastor. What about you? You are a Christian. You go to church. Should you be blamed for the level of corruption we have in this country?
Oh, like the corruption in this country cannot be blamed, like particularly to one person, like all of us. But those that are in authority, they are supposed to be blamed most, because what they say or what they do is like an example to us. Let's say my pastor. Look, for me, at times I watch or I look up to them, because two blind persons cannot, work together. One must not be blind. So if a pastor, you are doing what is not right, for me, I think what you are doing is not right. So I need not to follow you. You get that? I need to follow. So they are supposed to be blamed for the corruption of this country. If like this speak against corruption, their church members will follow them, because each and every church member do believe and respect his or her leader.
But a church member reads and understands the Bible. And the Bible has been admonishing us against stealing. So if church members are stealing, can we say we can blame the church for it?
Oh, yeah. I still believe that we can blame the church for it, particularly the leaders, because even nowadays when they go to the church premise, they don't even speak to the right issue. They don't speak to the right issue. They only speak to come, I'll give you this, come, I'll give you visa, I'll help you in this way. But as for them to speak to the issue that stop fornicating, stop gossiping, stop this, you don't normally hear these things of late in the churches. But you only hear, come, I'll give you visa, come, I'll give you that, come, you know that. So they are to be blamed. They should be blamed to that issue.
So he has made this point here. Let me speak to another gentleman here. Stay with me. Chief, what's your thought on this?
I don't think the church should be blamed for the level of corruption in this country, because there are a lot of people who doesn't go to church but still engage themselves in corruption. So what those people, who should we blame? So I think the authorities who is in charge for punishing people who engage themselves in corruption are those we're supposed to blame for the level of corruption in this country.
So you think we cannot hold the church for the level of corruption? But he is arguing that the sort of teaching we give the church members is not leading us to fight corruption. You don't agree?
No, I don't agree at all. Not at all. Because the church, they can only advise their members not to engage themselves in corruption. But if their members engage them, they can't punish them. There are a lot of there are authorities or there are institutions who are supposed to do that job.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's not the responsibility of the church. Okay. The church is only to advise.
Okay.
So if we have some people who engage themselves in corruption, and authorities are responsible to punish those people, and they refuse to do, we can't blame the church. We should blame the institutions rather.
All right. So hold on for me. I am more Ghanaians are joining. Let's try and get some more views here. Chief, yes, sir. What do you make of the assertion that we should blame the church for the level of corruption we see in Ghana?
Thank you. I don't really know much about corruption in churches, but
no. You see, this woman of God is saying that we have a lot of Christians in Ghana. If you look at our statistics, Christianity forms majority, or a lot of Ghanaians are Christians than Muslims and traditionalists. So she's arguing that if that is the case, and we see the level of corruption we have in this country, then the church has not done something right to get its members to understand that for you to fear God, you need to eschew corruption.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, one way or the other, we might say that religious leaders, pastors specifically, have a role to play when it comes to corruption. I believe that they are leaders that can, preach a word in the sense that it will carry messages that can actually change the attitude, can actually reform, modify the way people think and see maybe even this subject matter we are trying to talk about, what goes into it. So I believe that if corruption is at its highest peak, the role the religious leaders can do is to hold sermons, not always about the spiritual aspect of churching, but they can also have this meetings, okay, and then speak on corruption. Because to me, anytime I go to church, I've not even gone to church and then my pastor holds a conference, for instance, on corruption. So I don't really know much about corruption, and I don't even know if corruption has to do with giving money before I can get something done for me. Okay, so sometimes I feel like, okay, to me, sometimes I feel like, okay, if I give money out and then the person is supposed to can do the thing for me, not necessarily to abuse the person, okay, but then just to make the person or push the person to do something further as an incentive. Okay. So then, to me, would that be a corruption? I don't know. But I feel like religious leaders have a role to play. Okay. They have the best platforms to do that. Okay. So if they have the numbers to do that. So when they propagate everything, when you keep on listening to messages, it reforms you. It makes you think in a certain pattern. It shapes your life. Okay. So certain decisions you wouldn't take, even if it makes you feel like you are going to lose something. You understand? It has become a part of you. So you become very disciplined in that section. So I believe that yes, religious leaders have a role to play, because I feel like they have the masses now as it stands. And stats have said it. You have said it. All right? Because when I go to churches and I see all these preachings and things, and most of them even have shows more than any other shows, they're able to buy the TV stations with whatever and then preach. So I believe that, yes, the religious leaders, they have more to do.
One of your friends was arguing earlier that they seem to be much concerned about offering, than getting members to understand, like you're saying, that what you do in terms of you stealing from the state or giving money to someone to get him to do something in your favor is corruption. You seem to agree with him.
Like if you
I mean his point is that the church is more about offering than getting people to understand that as a Christian you should eschew corruption.
If it's about offering, offering one way or the other is mandatory. Okay, because it's not necessarily that if you don't have the money you can't pay, but it is anything. The Bible is constitutional, one way or the other. So we work with the Bible, but there's always a caveat to even the constitutions. Okay, so there's always a condition. So what if this is not there? So what if I don't have the money to pay? Does that necessarily mean that so corruption in its sense is like, with what you just asked, it's like I wouldn't say that I can actually even draw a thin line between why people say that offering, for instance, is corruption.
Offering can't be corruption, can it?
Or is that not the question you're asking?
No. I'm saying that because when you go to church today, it's about we giving offering. No. When we are doing fundraising, they put people in front to give a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean that's not corruption.
No, that is not. But the argument is that the church is focused on that one than getting the members to understand that stealing money from the state or your organization or giving money.
So anything you do over and over again is questionable. So if every time we hold those kind of sessions that okay, we are raising money, in the long run it even make people more corrupt.
Okay, all right. It's getting interesting here. Stay with us. There's a lot for us to talk about. Now I've had 4. So before I come to you, let me bring in this young man as well. Chief, what's your thought on the point that the church, stay with me, yeah? The church has not done much in fighting corruption. What will be your response?
My response is the church has not done much in fighting corruption. It's the kind of sermons they preach in the church more times is about money, and the church is more, especially the pastor, they are more interested in acquiring awards, using the members more than preaching those kind of stuff, like about talking about like the state, the kind of activities they do to engage in corruption and stuff. Like for example, most of the politicians, when they go to church, they normally give a lot of offering. So they don't talk about it. Since the moment you talk about it, the person is not going to come to his church or something. So they don't talk about those kind of stuff. You get it? That's why they are no more into talking about that kind of system, corruption and stuff. That's my idea about it.
Interesting. So once we've all come to, so one person disagrees that the church is to blame for the level of corruption we see. Now, for those of you who think the church is to blame, what do you like to see if we want the church to play a role in fighting corruption?
Okay, thank you very much once again. Let me clear something. First of all, let's ask ourselves, what is corruption? And even most Ghanaians don't know that even your attitude towards your brother or your sister can be a corruption. So you shouldn't mostly think about giving money for you to get something done. That's only that's just a minute type of corruption. So corruption is about your attitude, everything. So let's ask ourselves, how many of the pastors or the church leaders who speak against those attitudes? Most like you lecturing the place is a type of corruption. But they don't talk about those things. All they talk about is, come, I will give you a visa, come, I will do this, come, I'll give it up to you. And my other guys too said that the Bible is like constitution. The Bible cannot be a constitution because when you go against the Bible, no one is going to punish you or take you to court as when you go about the constitution. And the Bible too is mandatory between you and your God, but it's not mandatory between you and your pastor or even the state. So the Bible is not mandatory, as he said earlier on. So if the church members, they don't understand what is corruption, most of them, what they understand is giving money for things to be done. And the pastors too are not educating them on those issues. For me, for instance, if I am just a layman person, when I go to church and my father said, when you do ABC, it amounts to corruption, so don't do it. For me, I don't have money that I'm going to pay to person A or person B for me to get something done. But my attitude can be a corrupt attitude. If my pastor educates me on those things, since I don't have money, I will just go by what he said. Don't go to place A, I won't go there. So at that instant, we are reducing corruption. But they are not doing that. All they are more interested in, as I said earlier on, is they are interested in amassing wealth. As I said earlier on, when you go to some of the pastors, their houses, they have a lot of clothes, food over there, but some of their members are suffering. But when you go to church, they said we are going to what do you call it? Kofiniyama. When you don't give, I was a church member to a very huge church in this country. When I go to church, I went there over 4 to 5 years. I wasn't recognized. Why? Because I don't have money. You get that? Yeah, because I don't have money.
You think so?
I think so. Because when you go to church, they have something called show. Somebody is giving 200 million instant, 100 million instant. My margin is 1 cedi. So even those who give 50 CDs, 100 CDs, they have different kinds of prayers that they pray for them. You bear with me. Well, they play with them. But when you give 200 CDs or you give 100 CDs, when you give 100 CDs or 200 CDs, they will pray for you differently in a way that, like, they will let you know that God is receiving or God is giving you something instant. But those who pay 1 CD, they gather us together and pray for us once, even in a snappy way. You get that?
Okay, thank you very much. So that's it. You said you have a counter to that?
Yes, I just systematically want to substantiate and unravel 1 or 2 things that he claimed that wasn't mandatory. When I was just looking at the correlation, because corruption really, it is not something, I didn't want to relate it biblically. So I was using the constitution. So if it is constitutional, then why do we say, if it is constitutional, then I'll say that, okay, then it's mandatory. If it is mandatory, then I told you that there was a caveat to it. So even if I don't have money to go to church, okay, that doesn't stop me from not going. Do you understand me? And also I believe that the churches can help, okay, because they have the the platforms. Okay, they have the platform. They can preach some of the things. They can hold conferences, even in their church. Not necessarily the older ones. Okay, the youthful ones, they should have conferences and teach them, let them know that this is what corruption is. These are the behaviors that when you put up may lead to the corruption. These are the things that you are supposed to look out for. When somebody is trying to induce you and trying to post something new, is trying to put you in a condition that will make you uncomfortable. Okay, then you know that, okay, if I take these decisions, it will lead me to corruption. Okay. So I believe that the religious leaders as a whole and as a country, we all need to put our hands on decks. Okay. And then I mean, kettle, we can't do away with it, but we can just kettle the level of corruption in the country.
All right, thank you very much. So this brings us to the end of the discussion for the first topic. Now the second topic, which of course is very relevant to all of us, especially you, is the fact that both the NDC and the NPP are arguing over who is the best manager of this economy. Now, let me. Oh, all of you are laughing. Let me bring it to you. You would know what do you make of this? Let me start from you.
I think the NDC is they are better managers than the NPP.
Oh, okay. What makes you think so?
Because comparing before 2016 and now, you can see that the NDC was a little bit better than what's going on now in Ghana.
All right, okay, so he says it's the NDC that is better than the NPP. Chief, what do you make of it?
As I usually say, for me, even to begin with, I will just cite one example that shows that the NDC is far, far better than NPP in terms of managing or fighting corruption. During ex-President Mohammed's administration, his own appointee, Victoria Hammond, when she just made a statement that when she gets 4 million cedis or dollars, she will quit politics. Mohammed said then, even with this intention, I can't work with you because there's no way we're going to earn this money within the 4-year period that we are supposed to work together. Let's bring that to this current administration. There are a lot of corruption cases, even at the presidency, and the years ahead squash it. But the president earlier on said that we shouldn't be spectators, but should be citizens. But when you raise all this concern, he just said he said there's commission, they lambast the report, then they are good to go. Most cases are there that we cannot cite or pinpoint to. But with NDC, even aside that, Mahama also take his own appointees like Abu Kapele and stuff. They take them to court. So even with these examples, it clearly shows that the NDC is, in terms of fighting corruption, is clear and better than the NPP as they tout it.
Okay. What about managing the economy? Because that's the contention there.
Oh, but about managing the economy, I also think with the management of the economy, the NDC is far better in terms of managing the economy than NPP. Why am I saying this? During the administration of the NDC, though things wasn't easy as we want it, but it's far better than as we've seen today, because the kind of promises our current president made before getting to power, he has not realized that we don't lie our way into hot power, because the reality has caught him red-handed. Because let's even compare dollar to CD ratio. During Mohammed's administration, it was 4 cities, 20 pesos before they left office, but now 7 cities and coins. You get it? So if we are comparing the 8 years term and the 5 years term as we are in, they are far better than the MPP.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Chief. What do you also make of this debate that
in terms of
that the NDC and the MPP, who is a better manager of the Ghanaian economy?
For me, in management of the economy, NDC and MPP, I think they are both not doing well. Okay. But I think NDC is far better than the MPP. Like looking at the unemployment rate, and a lot of graduate students are in the house now, applying for jobs, and now it has led to a scamming something. The scamming has turned to a job in this country, okay? Because the person wants to survive by all means. It doesn't have the means. So you have to find a ways and means to survive. People are duping people for money and stuff. That's why this MTN, there has been a lot of scams and stuff going on and stuff. You get it? So in terms of managing the economy there,
MPP, NDC is for better, a bit than MPP. Okay. Looking at this current situation we are, because if you have 10 cities like this, now you can't buy anything.
It can only get to go back.
Go back, the kenke cry. I just bought kenke and I didn't feel it at all. Not at all, boy. So it's like, yeah.
With 10 Ghana cedis, you didn't feel it?
No, kenke is 3 cities and stuff. 2 cities is like, it's like just.
Interesting, Benjamin. And you and I were just talking about the fact that for many of these people, assessing the economy would have nothing to do with GDP figures and have nothing to do with our debt to GDP ratio. It's all about how they feel in their pockets and how much, 10 cedis can afford them. And we just saw that. As if we knew what was going to happen. This gentleman just told us, his struggle this morning in getting breakfast.
Yeah. The question then would be, what is the GDP of your own pocket? That is how we appreciate it. The micro, no. So when I dip my hands into my pockets right now, so that is what we're looking at. When I have to go, and Bernice, I'll tell you, when I have to go get fuel every week.
It's challenging, isn't it? It's challenging.
It's not an easy distance.
I have one of my sisters, when we go to the market. And
I'm laughing, but there's no laughing matter.
We're trying to purchase an item, and the seller says, things have been increased.
Yeah.
Then she says, but yes, you need to we need to find a middle ground.
Do you know one of the not funniest, but also very real ones going to market nowadays? Yeah. Like you can go with 200 cedis today. It will shock you that tomorrow.
It's real.
200 cedis can't get you what 200 cedis.
It's real. I mean, those
are the real dynamics.
Real everyday issues. Yeah. But before they were talking about the issue of who's handled the economy better, the big one on church and corruption, and we had a very interesting conversation with Reverend Dr. Opuni Frimpong. He's of the view that you can't blame the church. There's very little the church can do to preach, to admonish, to encourage. The real actors are those who've been voted into power, who have to enforce.
A lot of whom are also
members
Christian.
Of the church. Yes.
A lot of whom are also Christian, and there's a poll we'll be referencing shortly. But I just want to say that we cannot totally detach the church from these matters, because look, the churches who know this person before getting into politics had X. All of a sudden, the person has Z. Mm-hmm. What accounts for that? And we make these people elders. Mm-hmm. We give them front rows in the churches and all of that. Yes. We hype. I think that is where the church is culpable. But beyond that, like you're saying, the moral fabric generally of our country points towards corruption. You speak to people, even people in university, tertiary institutions today, and some of them are very blunt. Oh, I want to go into politics. I'm going into student politics. From there, I want to go into national politics. Why? Oh,
it's unfortunate. Anyway, so we'll take your quick comment on that, and we asked you if the church should be blamed for increasing acts of corruption in the country. And a lot of you shared your comments with us, and we'll share them with the rest of the world. Alexis says, oh yes, not only are they facilitating it by not preaching against it, they also accept proceeds from corrupt acts as blessings from God. And Sumaila responds and says, has the church asked anybody to go take bribes and engaged in corrupt practices? You can only conclude that someone is corrupt when he or she is convicted of corruption. So that's someone's argument also. If somebody...
How many of them do get to be convicted? Looking at the climate of our political system, where a lot of the time, within both regimes, people are covered up. Mm-hmm. I know one may do better than the other, but a lot of the time you can see it is glaring. While they'll tell you evidence in court and all of that, we see cover-ups. How will they be exposed then?
So Sumaila says, well, You can't say anyone is engaged in corrupt acts until they've been found guilty by a competent court. And
current jurisdiction, they will never be found. I mean, when I say current, I don't refer to this administration. I'm saying the dispensation, the way it is going now, party to party.
So they engage in an interesting banter on this particular one. So you can also get onto our Facebook page and join the conversation. But Jerry Kweku Danso says church culture and tradition, poverty, as well as the political party system given by the Constitution, each has a role. So he thinks that we shouldn't just put it at the feet of the church. Don Louis says the time John Mahama was president, the church was second in terms of corruption ranking. Today, the church is first. Okay, I don't know what ranking he's referencing here because I'm not aware of this.
Obviously, a ranking from Don Louis G.
Timothy says it's lame to assert that church should be blamed for the increasing acts of corruption. Without the role of the body of Christ, it would have been worse.
I concur to an extent, right? Because you can always say the situation is bad. Democracy is bad. At least the way we are practicing it, you can say it is bad. But without it, where would we have been? Maybe a military regime.
That's an interesting angle to the conversation. For Dr. Puni Frimpong, he says Ghana as a whole needs to be born again. Not the individuals in Ghana, but the country itself. Richard says, why would anyone blame the church? An inanimate building? Okay, I'm sure the argument of whether the church is the building or the church is the body.
It is the body.
So you're taking us into a bit of theology here. But he says, what we as a people find difficult to do is taking responsibility. We always blame someone else but ourselves. How hard is it to admit that we are corrupt? Until we can admit that we are the problem, we can never solve anything.
See, these contributors have pearls of wisdom, bits of pearls of wisdom in what they're saying, because a lot of the problem is us as a people. And you ask yourself, the politicians, they come from us, our families, our homes, our communities. So there must be something we're also doing as a people that makes them think, oh, then I must act in certain ways in order to please the people. Look, a typical example, I've had MPs sit in the studio and tell me about the barrage of requests they get every day. Funeral, outdooring.
Weddings.
Someone once told me that someone came to him and said, you know, I am starting up a building and I want you to help me with the foundation. Like, how does that happen? Anyway. So we're bringing you more of your thoughts, your reflections on that from that social media poll to find out what your reflections are, what your thinking is. Do you agree when it is said that the church in Ghana is responsible for the rot we are seeing in the system?
So we have a poll on Twitter. We'll take it shortly and then we'll open the phone line for you to share your thoughts with us on this particular issue, on whether the church should be blamed for endemic corruption in Ghana. So this is our poll on Twitter. Should the church be blamed for increasing acts of corruption in the country? And 60% of our respondents say yes and 40% say no. And well, we've got some few minutes left for the poll to end. You can get there.
So some 7 minutes, right? Do you think it would change anything? 131 votes so far. I don't think this is going to be a Manchester City Real Madrid situation where in the last minute maybe there could be a flip.
Yeah. But so from the poll, many people believe that the church should be blamed. But again, you want to ask the question, why would you want to blame someone who has no power to put in the structures? That's Dr. Puni's argument. There are state actors responsible and state institutions responsible for putting in the right structures and enforcing the law and implementing the law. So for those of us who just have a role to say, oh, please don't be corrupt, please don't do this, please don't do that, and that's where our job ends. How do you blame us for
I'll look at it from two angles. I feel the church too, in terms of church leadership, has become political, and by so doing, they have taken off part of the covering they have, because we've seen people, whether for or against whichever political party, spew things that are politics rather than teachings of the church. That is part of the problem. But the other bit you ought to look at when it comes to this question has to do with our leaders. Predominantly, they've been Christian, haven't they?
Yes.
That's an angle to look at it from. Our presidents, I was indicating in the news review that people mistake Liman for a Muslim. He wasn't a Muslim. So most of our leaders, though he didn't subscribe to Christianity either, he had a mix of things, but that's for another day. We've had all of these leaders. Our presidents, by and large, in the Fourth Republic, what have they been? Christian. So I feel, yes, some burden lies on us as Christians. If we find ourselves where we are, though we've had vice presidents who've been Muslim as well, we have to account. Have we lived up to expectation? That's the question.
All right, we'd like to hear what you also have to say. You can call us. Our numbers will be put up on the screen shortly. Do share your thoughts with us. Where do you stand in this conversation? We'll be glad to know. And then most importantly, what can we do to change the narrative? Over time, we've tried a couple of things. Recently, introducing the special prosecutor. Has it changed anything for you? Or do you still think that we have this hurdle to cross when it comes to corruption in Ghana? Do call us. Benjamin, do you want to announce the numbers?
0302, gladly burners, 0302-211-691, extension 2. 0302-211-691, extension 2. It will be rolling on your screen as well, so just give us a call. And please, let me mention, when you call, don't focus on the sound from your TV or whatever. Please just focus on the interaction with us. But let's take some social media comments before we
Exactly, and this is quite a lengthy one from Abdul. I'll see how I can summarize it. Let us stop always criticizing the church, he says, in the fight against corruption. Does the church have to be in every member's house or workplace? The church is doing all it can, but human beings' quest for wealth and earthly delights is unstoppable. You can say the church has to refuse their contributions, but here again, how do I know for sure that somebody is engaged in corruption when they bring an offering to the church? So, Pastor Benjamin, I am a member of your church. And I work
when your life changes drastically. I mean, within a very short space of time, when you get into politics, I have to be suspicious.
Okay, and you have to call me and ask me a few questions as my pastor, as my shepherd.
I have to call you and give you some counsel about what I see. And if you don't satisfy me with answers, I don't know about making you an elder and the rest, but I may not necessarily be able to say, don't put your money into the coffers. I agree.
You get it. So it's quite a difficult situation here. He says it's like going to the Apateshiba to warn a seller not to sell to a heavy drunkard, and the seller will tell you, when I don't sell to him, another seller will do so. Even if the church identifies the corrupt ones and expels them, there's another church that will accept them. We should stop always criticizing
them. So maybe before we go on with more messages, let me be biased, because the person on the line now is called Ben. Ben is from New Achimota. Good morning, Ben. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Ben. Hello.
Right. Okay. So Ben to Ben. Good morning. What are your quick thoughts on the matters we're discussing?
How are you?
I'm very well. Hope you are too.
Hi. Yes. Hello.
Hello, Ben. Can you hear me? Okay. So don't listen on your television.
All right.
Focus on the phone. Okay.
All right.
All right. Do go ahead with your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. Please, when it comes to corruption. When it comes to corruption, please, the church cannot be blamed for the level of corruption we have in this country. It can never be blamed.
Okay.
As you speak now, who is now having the power to prosecute people who are corrupting, stealing state money? Who is the power? 2016, prior to the election, see the kind of this president, the kind of campaign he did at the court. When he gained the power, what is now doing now? So if someone blames the church for the level of corruption we have in this country, I beg to differ. Unless that person can sit me down and convince me.
Okay.
He has appointed special prosecutor. For how long now? It's been more than 6 months. So are they trying to tell us that there's nobody stealing in their government? Are they trying to give us this information? Martin Amadou was appointed first. And because of the things that he needs to work, he was not getting. The kind of work that he was doing. The president and the finance minister, in that situation they were in. So for him to bring out things It's like they were preventing him from working.
Okay.
They were preventing him from working.
All right.
So he just has to resign.
Ben, thank you so much for sharing these thoughts with us. Very important points you raised. But we also have Sherman from Dodowa, Bernice.
Yeah, Sherman, thank you for joining the show. Let's know what you have to say.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I think that you can entirely blame the church. First of all, I think the church is made up of individual families. And these individual families converge to make the church. So if we are saying the church is corrupt, then we are saying our individual families brought the corruption to the church. Because the church is not a place where we come learn the corruption. And so I think blaming the church for corruption, it's a bit, it's not bizarre. I don't know what exactly it should be.
You think it's far-fetched, eh?
I think it's far-fetched. We should do, because the church does not teach corruption. We as people are corrupt in our own homes, in our workplaces, and then we send it to the church. I mean, the church can't do any magic to change people from their characters. They can only hope we change. And so I think our families are the places we should look at, not the church. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Benjamin, just before we pick our next caller, it reminds me of something Dr. Opuni said, that we must begin to look at having national values. You know, go to primary schools. Now, young children are looking for leaked questions. You know, and I remember speaking to a young girl who was just about to write her BEC, and I told her, it's not about the apple, it's about the value. It's about you thinking that you can have your way through everything. Yeah. Once you do that, even when you become a politician,
you'll still cut corners.
Exactly, you'll still have that mentality. So it's not so much about, oh, you're making it difficult to us, it's difficult to study. It's about what value.
Let me ask you a question before we go to John Bosco. Can you name one value that we have as Ghanaians?
That's what Dr. Punif was talking about.
Let's do John Bosco from Bolga. John, good morning.
Good morning.
Right. What are your quick thoughts on the matters we're discussing?
I want to actually make a quick contribution to the topic on discussion.
Right.
I actually have heard people talk about the fact that the church is not actually in people's homes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I've heard people make the suggestion that the church is not actually in people's homes. That you understand. But what we should actually know is that we should look at the broader picture. People are born in Christian homes. But the church actually goes beyond just the building that we all see. So beyond actually at any given point in time, sometimes what do we see? We see that people actually get certain favors by cutting corners. That is the beginning of corruption. What does the church actually do? The church, they go to the church and then they thank God, they give testimony and are more or less like, well, some me, but actually God came through for me. They don't see it as a form of corruption, but they see it as a kind of God's favor. You see, and so the church is not just about the issue of actually preaching, but what life actually does the church itself actually showing leadership. People get all forms of money. I mean, the church clearly actually knows very well that these people are not getting the money from whose house. Yeah, they make them elders of the church.
Right.
I mean, that goes a long way. And we, the young people, actually look at what people do. We don't look at what they say.
Okay.
So if at the end of the day, more or less like at the end of the day, if we keep talking and in one bit, this is that's what they are practicing, then everybody actually thinks that, oh, well, if you're actually able to cut corners, and then it means that you are being smart, and it means that God is actually in favor of you. So this is a long way, yes.
Right. John, thank you so much for contributing. But very important point he makes there. Now, when you're Christian and you stick to the values, you appear to be a fool. Just like the Bible says, sometimes you'll appear a fool. And if you cut corners, you are the smart guy.
And also, it reminds me of a conversation I was having with a friend. Because we have weak structures and because we don't have people supervising those who've been asked to do their work, going through the right way sometimes is frustrating. Do you get it? It's very frustrating. So sometimes you're thrown between getting what you need as quickly as you can or being morally right. And it's a challenge for many people here in this country. They may not want
Sometimes those in your circle will even make you, we are John.
Yeah, because
you can quickly see this through. And
they may not want to give that policeman the money, but they're thinking about how he's going to frustrate them.
Yeah.
I know someone who would say, let's go through the court process.
Yeah.
And he will go through it to the end.
Yeah. Even if it will cost him more, it will
But he doesn't
leave him, losing a lot of time.
He doesn't have a job like you and I do, when we have to come to work at 5 a.m. And so he can bear the consequences. But there are so many people. So it's about fixing the structures. Let people do their work right. If I go to a government agency, due process must be followed. I should not be frustrated. You get what I mean? But we have Clement from Santa Maria. Hello,
I think
Clement.
we've lost Clement, so maybe we now have Dominic in Tamale.
Great. Hello, Dominic. How's Tamale this morning?
Oh, Tamale is very fantastic this morning.
Okay, great to have you. Let's hear what you have to say.
All right, so I think that the church should not be the case that the church should be blamed for corruption. But I believe that the church can partly be blamed because the church exists to preach virtues and to ensure that people's lives are transformed. But then the church has no legal right to punish wrongdoing. So what the church does is just to preach the good message to the members. And it is now left onto the members' discretion to decide to practice or not to practice. All right. So that is my opinion.
Okie doke. Dominic, thank you so much. And that's our final caller, Dominic from Tamale. Interesting. Today we've had callers from Dodowa, Bolga, Tamale, New Achimota. So it's pretty reflective.
Yeah.
And a lot of people saying many different things. In other words, some saying you can't blame the church. Others saying, yes, there is some level of blame. And some saying, go to the root, the families. And come to think of it, our social studies, cultural studies from way back, society and the nucleus of it, the families. But someone else will also tell you that these families are Christian or something else, right? So it comes back to the same chicken and egg situation.
Yes, very
Which one came first?
Yeah. And there are those who say, well, the church must educate. You know, when we had Kojo Brace joining us with the views of some students.
Indeed.
But the National Commission for Civic Education.
And now they have a new acting chairperson.
Yes.
Maybe I could just seize this opportunity to congratulate her, Kathleen Addy.
So what are they also doing? I mean, someone was saying, what exactly is corruption?
Yeah.
You only think it's about signing fraudulent checks, and all that. But something very little as, pushing some money to a receptionist to say, put me in front of the queue.
I'll tell you something I did, and the response, I never felt, back in my University of Ghana days, first degree. So we had to go through a process. You know the health screening you have to go through. And I got to this place. Little did I know that one of those there was my former teacher from like primary JHS, something like that. So he sees me at a point, and I had a Spanish test like within an hour. He sees me and he calls me into the room. I have no idea. Then he picks my form and puts it on top. For a moment, I actually thought, but this is going to work in my favor. I have to go, get ready for the test. But then something told me that's not the right thing to do. So I told him, oh, but what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm trying to. So I said, no, put it back. Do you know, he didn't say anything. But when I eventually got in and I was able to go, he had taken my number. Later, he called me and said, what you did today really got me thinking. You did the right thing. I didn't see that. But sometimes you feel the pinch, but you must simply do what is right.
If you were in church, you'd be given a testimony.
I would be given a testimony on this one. But anyway, so this is where we draw the curtains. Mind you, every day, nowadays, we go up to 10. And, well, I should say 9:55, thereabouts. Yeah. And every day you'd have the opportunity to call in like this and share your thoughts, also on social media, so don't you miss out. But it's been fun, hasn't it?
It has been. Very interesting conversations we've had. You had that conversation on the Elevy, injunction, pending substantive case.
I always get excited by this. I'm waiting for the next one to see. And we'll come and do Buga Buga here.
But we quickly have to wrap up.
Oh, yeah. And right before we go.
Birthday wishes, yeah?
Yeah. So we'll do this bit before we get to the birthday wishes. But we all know water is life. It regulates your body temperature and keeps you alive and kicking. Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. We have the perfect sizes for all occasions, 330 and 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets, and bags, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. We have introduced our special 19-liter jars for offices and homes. Now you just need to stay awake with Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. So come on, wherever you are, sitting on your couch, in your office, wherever, grab a bottle of Awake Water and get quality hydration. Awake Purified Drinking Water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's produced by Casa Preco. For bulk purchases, please call 0262 351 251. Let's talk money. Did you know that the income of a young entrepreneur from some selected businesses is exempt from tax for 5 years? Any young entrepreneur engaged in manufacturing, information and communications technology, agro-processing, energy production, waste processing, tourism and the creative arts, horticulture and medicinal plants does not need to pay any income tax on these activities for their first 5 years of operation. Now, a young entrepreneur engaged in a business that enjoys an initial 5-year concession benefits from the following applicable tax rates for an additional 5 years. Here we go. Accra and Tema, 15%. Other regional capitals outside the 3 northern regions, 12.5%. Outside the other regional capitals, 10%. And within the 3 northern regions, 5%. So if you want clarity, all you need to do, reach out to your nearest GRA office. Ghana Revenue Authority. Integrity, fairness, and service. And that is that. Let's do some birthday messages, Bernice, shall we?
Happy birthday to King David Vo of Studio Vo. He's also known as
Shito, aka Shito.
I wish you long life and prosperity, especially good health. This is from your daughter, Awojifa Marion. And happy, blessed birthday to Kwehu Pepia Sehene. Nana Bonsu, Ababio, the second. From Nanedu, that's a wife, Amasewa in La Paz, Accra. You want to do the rest?
Okay, so definitely we celebrate one more time Danicia Adjoapoma Ajay. She's right here with us. Today is that day, your birthday. Mr. Ajay's baby last, if you like. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Even if we've not mentioned your name, today's your birthday, yeah? We celebrate you, okay? We celebrate
Definitely.
You. Happy birthday to you. And on that note, am I Benjamin Akako today or Bernice?
Yes, you are Benjamin Akako, and I am Bernice Abubedulansa. We really appreciate your company. Do make time with us. Tomorrow at 6 a.m. the show starts, and you always know it's worth waking up for.
Have a good day.
Take care.